Chapter 1592. I'll borrow you for a while, the burly old man said lightly. Shinbijuan's face paled when she heard this. She bit her lip and shouted, "Shameless!" The burly old man was startled. Only now did he realize that his words had caused the other party to misunderstand. However, he clearly had no interest in explaining and directly pressed toward her. Obediently cooperate with this old man, and you won't suffer any physical pain. Dream on. As a woman, especially one who was born to be a source of calamity, Shinbijuan was naturally very sensitive to such matters. She subconsciously thought of that, especially when she thought about how the innocence she had fought so hard to protect was going to be lost to this old man. She felt so depressed that she wanted to vomit blood. Rather than being harmed by this old man, it was better to give it to Zhao Wei. At this time, Zhao Wei's appearance suddenly appeared in Shinbijuan's mind. For some reason, she felt a special sense of closeness toward Zhao Wei. Perhaps it was because he had helped her when she needed it the most, or perhaps it was because he was the person her father had entrusted to her before he died. Unfortunately, he had been sent to the service room. Shinbijuan's face turned red. She didn't know why she still had the time to think about these random things at a time like this. Seeing the approaching old man, Shinbijuan's eyes suddenly revealed a trace of determination. She gathered all the strength in her body and slammed into a nearby pillar. At this time, she had already given up on the idea of revenge. After all, with the fall of Yelu Isin and Xiao Xiama, it was inevitable that she would fall out of favor. If she was humiliated by this old man, she had her own pride. She was the eldest young lady of the Shun family, a famous, beautiful, and talented woman, and the crown princess of the empire. She could endure humiliation in order to take revenge, but in a situation where there was no hope of revenge, she could not sell her innocence in order to live. She believed that when she met her parents and the ancestors of the Shun family in the underworld, they wouldn't blame her. She had already tried her best after making this decision. She suddenly relaxed. She had been tense all this time. How many days had it been since she had had a good night's sleep? From now on, she should be able to sleep well. However, the pain she imagined did not come. Instead, she fell into a warm embrace. She subconsciously looked up and saw a man looking down at her. Even though he was wearing a mask, she could tell from his hair and eyes that he was a relatively young man. Feeling the masculine aura around him, Shinbijuan's face turned red. Even though she was in a life-and-death situation, her many years of education had been deeply ingrained into her bones. Just as she was about to push him away, she heard him say, "What's the matter that makes you so depressed?" "It's you." Shinbijuan's eyes instantly blurred because she recognized the other party's voice. It was Zhao Wei, whom she had been relying on and worrying about all this time. "Who are you?" The elder frowned and stopped. He didn't continue forward. He had been planning to stop Shinbijuan when he saw that she was about to commit suicide, but someone had been faster than him. It was so fast that he didn't even know how that person had appeared. How could he not be on guard? Who I am isn't important. On the other hand, you're someone who has been famous for a long time, yet you're bullying a weak little girl. Aren't you ashamed? The person who had come was naturally Song Qing-shu. He had just arrived when he saw Shinbijuan hit the pillar and had hurriedly tried to save her. He naturally didn't have a good impression of the culprit. He had recognized this tall and sturdy old man from the very beginning. It was Xiao Feng's father, Xiao Yuanshan. Previously, he had been the inspector of the imperial palace, but in the end, Yelu Isin had used Xiao Zhonghuwei and Yuan Qingji's affair as a pretext and had no choice but to admit his mistake and resign. After Xiao Feng had been imprisoned, Yelu Hongji had been worried that Xiao Yuanshan's martial arts would be a disaster. At the same time, he had sent people to capture him, but unfortunately, he had escaped and disappeared without a trace. There had been one attempt to break into the prison to save Xiao Feng, but Yelu Hongji had already made preparations. Not only had he sent a large number of soldiers to guard the prison, but he had also arranged for many experts, so he had returned without success. Of course, with Xiao Yuanshan's martial arts, it would have been difficult for those people to stop him. Those who want to achieve great things don't bother with trifles. Reputation is nothing to this old man. Xiao Yuanshan stared at Shun Bijuan in his arms. This old man needs to use her to exchange for someone else. I won't harm her. With his usual personality, he wouldn't have bothered to explain so much. However, he had been startled by the other party's movement technique just now and felt a bit of fear. He had no choice but to use a negotiating tone to communicate with the other party. Exchange. Song Qing-shu was startled at first, but then he immediately realized that the other party was most likely planning on using Shun Bijuan as a hostage to exchange for Xiaofeng. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but sigh. As expected of one of the two famous scammers in the demigods and semi-devils. It had to be known that Shun Bijuan had been sent to the palace by Yelu Isin's people. Now that Yelu Isin had fallen from power, it was almost inevitable that she would fall out of favor. In the end, Xiao Yuanshan wanted to use someone who was destined to be thrown into the cold palace to exchange for the king of the southern courtyard. Had he been kicked in the head by a donkey? But Song Qing-shu had really misunderstood him. When Xiao Yuanshan had been the inspector of the palace, he knew that the new Hui Fei was a beauty that could topple cities and could rival the empress. Even though the fall of Yelu Isin had caused her to lose her support, her most useful beauty was still there. Yelu Hongji was also a lecher. No man would be willing to give up such a beauty that was a disaster. So he could use her to gamble. In any case, it didn't matter if he lost the gamble, he wouldn't lose anything. Xiao Yuanshan had no other choice but to use this plan. Last time he had broken into the prison, he had alerted the enemy. Right now, the place where Xiaofeng was being held was like an iron wall. Not even a fly could fly in. It was impossible for him to directly rescue Xiaofeng, so he could only place his thoughts on Shun Bijuan. If Song Qing-shu knew his true thoughts, he would probably still mock him. He was really so childish at his age. For the emperor, no matter how beautiful a woman was, she was still a woman. Xiaofeng was an existence that could affect his safety and the throne. How could he release a tiger back into the mountains for a woman? Not to mention the emperor, who had been educated in the ways of the emperor since he was young. Any official who had been in politics for a few years would make this choice without hesitation. She is mine. How could I give her to you? Song Qing-shu grabbed Shun Bijuan's slender waist and rejected Xiao Yuanshan without hesitation. Hearing the other say that she was his person, Shun Bijuan's face instantly turned red. She thought, how could he say something like that? If it got out, her reputation, but she quickly reacted. At her current level, she didn't have the qualifications to think about things like reputation. Looking at the tall figure of the man in front of her, she suddenly felt a sense of security she had never felt before. This seems not bad. Being mercilessly rejected, Xiao Yuanshan's face instantly darkened and a fierce look appeared in his eyes. Humph. Refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Although his opponent's qigong was high, his martial arts might not be high. Moreover, looking at all the experts in the world, there were not many that Xiao Yuanshan feared. As soon as he finished speaking, a long black whip instantly appeared in his hand. It covered the distance of several dozen feet in an instant and enveloped Shun Bijuan's body. Clearly, he planned on taking her by surprise. In Shun Bijuan's eyes, she couldn't see the whip at all. She could only see a roaring black dragon charging at her. In that instant, she felt her soul tremble. She felt her hands and feet go cold. Her body couldn't even move, let alone dodge. Vajra demon, subduing ring? Song Qing-shu coldly laughed. He raised his hand and pointed forward. The roaring black dragon instantly collapsed, turning into a small snake that fell to the ground. Xiao Yuanshan's expression changed. The Vajra demon, subduing ring, was the ultimate technique that he had painstakingly trained for the past few decades in Shaolin. How could it be broken in one move? Just now, the other's finger seemed to have predicted it and pointed at the weakest point of his whip's internal energy conversion. It had to be known that before this, he didn't even realize that there was a flaw in this technique. His martial arts were this high, and he was still so young. Xiao Yuanshan's mind flashed, and he put away his whip. He cupped his hands and said, "So, it's Golden Snake King. It was a misunderstanding. Thanks to all the book friends who have gifted during this period of time. Because the annual meeting had been outside for a week, the double monthly votes this month couldn't be used. Why did the word used sound so sarcastic? Chapter 1593. Song Qing-shu was initially on guard against him, continuing to attack. After all, Xiao Yuanshan was considered a top master in the world. He was able to break his opponent's attack with one move mainly because he had already jumped out of the limitations of the man in the painting and used the advantage of time and space to attack the opponent's weakest point. If he jumped back into the painting and exchanged moves with him, it would be quite difficult to defeat him. Who knew that the opponent would actually stop after one move, and from the meaning of his words, it seemed that he had recognized him. Song Qingshu frowned. He was still too careless. Although he was wearing a mask, there was probably no one else in the world who had such high martial arts skills and was so young. It seemed that not only did he have to change his face, but he also had to hide his hair and age. Otherwise, he would be recognized wherever he went. It was really a headache. Hearing him call him the Golden Snake King, Shen Bijuan's eyes widened, and she looked at the man beside her in shock. Her heart was in turmoil. Isn't he Zhao Wei? How did he become the Golden Snake King, Song Qingshu? All these years, due to the contributions of the disciples of the Five Lakes sect, Song Qingshu's name had spread all over the world. Although she was in her boudoir, she had naturally heard of the Golden Snake King's name. But that's not right. I saw him and the Golden Snake King appear at the same time. Shen Bijuan suddenly thought of the encounter in the Wei Palace and could not help but feel confused. Song Qingshu hesitated for a moment, then took off his mask and cupped his hands at Xiao Yuanshan. Elder Xiao, my identity is sensitive now, and it is not appropriate to reveal it. Please forgive me for not recognizing you just now. Hearing that his voice was no longer Zhao Wei's voice, Shen Bijuan's mouth immediately opened wide. You. She was so shocked that she could not speak for a long time. Song Qingshu turned back to look at her and smiled gently at her. He did not explain anything here. Shen Bijuan's face turned red. She had already recognized that this person was indeed the Song Qingshu that she had seen in the Wei Palace that day. But what was up with Zhao Wei? Speaking of which, when he smiled, he looked quite good. You are the leader of a region. It is indeed inconvenient for you to expose yourself in a foreign country. Xiao Yuanshan nodded to show his understanding. Then, he changed the topic. But why did young master come to the Liao Palace? Previously, they were indebted to him for saving them from the hands of many Shaolin masters, so they were more polite to him. Song Qingshu pointed at Shen Bijuan. In the past, her father and I were old friends. Before he died, he asked me to save his daughter. The reason why he said this was to stop Xiao Yuanshan from having any ideas about Shen Bijuan. After all, Xiao Yuanshan's martial arts were extremely high, and he couldn't always stay by Shen Bijuan's side. Of course, he wasn't stupid enough to reveal Shen Bijuan's true identity, so he only vaguely said that he was old friend with her father. Hearing this, Shen Bijuan no longer had any doubts. The person in front of her was Zhao Wei, and at the same time, Song Qingshu. Thinking that her father was friends with the world-famous Golden Snake King, she couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. She once again saw hope for revenge for the Shun family. Xiao Yuanshan frowned. It is true that you are loyal to someone's request, but you came to save this woman, but you didn't care about your sworn brother. Haha, I see that this girl is an outstanding beauty, and I feel pity for her. No wonder, no wonder. His words were just short of saying that he had forgotten his friends after seeing a beauty. Shen Bijuan felt extremely awkward. Sometimes, she really hated herself for having such a beautiful appearance. Not only did she bring disaster to herself and her family, she had also embarrassed her benefactor. She unconsciously looked apologetically at the man beside her. Song Qingshu was also looking at her. Seeing her turn her head, he smiled and nodded, giving her a look that told her not to worry. This made Shen Bijuan blush, and she quickly turned her head away. Song Qingshu smiled faintly, then turned his head to look at Xiao Yuanshan. He knew that the other party was like a wooden club, so he didn't mind the rudeness in his words. Although Big Brother Xiao is in prison, his life is not in danger. This girl is alone in the palace, but there is danger at every step, so I came to save her first." Hearing the hidden meaning in his words, Xiao Yuanshan couldn't help but reveal a happy expression. "You mean that you would go save Feng?" Song Qingshu nodded. "Of course, he is my sworn brother, so of course I will go save him." "That's great." With young master taking action, I believe that Feng will definitely be able to turn misfortune into fortune. Xiao Yuanshan had seen his martial arts, and with his reputation, he instantly felt relieved. "My words just now were offensive. I hope young master doesn't take offense." "No problem. Senior is just worried about big brother Xiao." Song Qingshu smiled. Xiao Yuanshan nodded his head. He was very satisfied with his son's sworn brother. "When does young master plan on making a move?" Song Qingshu replied. "To ensure that nothing goes wrong, I still need some time to make some arrangements. Before that, I hope that Senior won't act rashly. Otherwise, it will be even harder to save him in the future." "I know this, I know." Xiao Yuanshan quickly nodded his head. His gaze landed on the beautiful Shun Bijuan beside him, and he revealed a strange smile. "Since it's like this old man won't disturb you any longer. I'll go back and wait for young master's news. Goodbye." After saying this, he didn't wait for the other to urge him to stay. He activated his movement technique and disappeared into the night sky. Thinking about Xiao Yuanshan's smile before he left, Shun Bijuan felt uncomfortable. "What did he mean by won't disturb you?" It was as if something was going to happen between us. Xiao Yuanshan is a bit muddle-headed. You don't need to take his words to heart. Seeing her uncomfortable appearance, Song Qingshu smiled and comforted her. At the same time, he thought to himself that Liao was really different from before. The imperial palace was like a public toilet. He could come and go as he pleased. It seemed like he had to reorganize the defenses of the imperial palace before he left. Otherwise, it would be unsafe for Zhao Min and Su Quan to stay here. Suddenly, his expression changed. He saw Xiao Yuanshan return with an awkward expression. "There's something I forgot to ask. I wonder if young master has seen Azu." "Azu." Song Qingshu's heart trembled. "That's right. Before I entered the palace, I went back to the southern courtyard palace. I heard from her personal maid that she came to see the emperor. In the end, it was already so late, and she still hasn't returned. I was worried, so I came to the palace to find her. I also planned to take Consort Hui as a hostage," Xiao Yuanshan explained. He was worried about the safety or innocence of his daughter-in-law. After all, Yelu Hongji was famous for being lecherous. Song Qingshu had a strange expression. He thought to himself, "I've not only seen her, I've seen her inside and out." But of course, he wouldn't say it out loud. Otherwise, if Xiao Yuanshan heard about what happened to his daughter-in-law, wouldn't he explode and fight him to the death? "When I passed by a palace, I saw someone who looked like her. I thought I saw her wrongly. Plus, I was in a hurry to get here, so I didn't think much about it." Song Qingshu naturally couldn't let Xiao Yuanshan roam around the palace. Firstly, he was afraid that he would discover some secret. Secondly, he was afraid that he would really save Azu. "Which palace?" Xiao Yuanshan asked anxiously. "I'll go with Senior. After all, she's my future sister-in-law." When Song Qingshu said this, the image of a naked body under the candlelight appeared in his mind. He couldn't help but feel guilty. "Thank you, young master." Xiao Yuanshan couldn't help but be overjoyed. "Senior, there's no need to be so polite. In the future, just call me Qingshu." After Song Qingshu finished speaking, he guiltily turned to Shun Bijuan and whispered in her ear, "Miss Shun, wait for me here. I'll come back to find you after I finish what I need to do." Chapter 1594. Feeling the hot breath coming from his mouth, Shun Bijuan's ears instantly turned red. She wondered why he was so close to her. Was it on purpose, or was it unintentional? Only when he walked far away did she suddenly realize that he simply did not want Xiao Yuanshan to hear. The other party had intentionally called her Miss Chun in order to make her feel at ease, but her identity obviously couldn't be known by others, so he had moved closer to her ear and said it. Thinking that she had actually worried about such a small matter for so long, she couldn't help but bite her lips, and her entire person became slightly absent-minded. Song Qing-shu led Xiao Yuanshan through the imperial palace. One of them had disguised himself as the emperor, while the other was once the leader of the imperial guards. Taking advantage of the cover of the night, they were naturally very familiar with the path and did not alarm any guards. Not long after, Song Qing-shu brought Xiao Yuanshan to the side courtyard where Azu was. Actually, he hesitated whether or not to bring him here. Instead of letting Xiao Yuanshan wander around the palace and meet with Azu in private, it was better to bring him here himself. With him watching from the side, Azu would be more obedient. The two of them did not alert the palace maids outside and flipped through the window into the inner courtyard. Azu had experienced such a thing tonight and could be said to be extremely agitated. After being brought here, she could not sleep no matter what, so she just sat by the window in a daze. The person who came in from the window gave her a fright. When she saw Xiao Yuanshan's face, she let out a sigh of relief. "Uncle, why are you here?" Her tone was filled with surprise. After all, she had suffered so much tonight, and seeing him was like seeing a family member. From a certain point of view, she had already treated Xiao Yuanshan as her father. "I heard that you entered the palace and saw that you did not come back, so I specially came to find you." Xiao Yuanshan looked her up and down after jumping in. Seeing that her eyes were slightly red, he could not help but frown and ask, "Why are you crying? Did the dog emperor bully you?" Towards the end, his voice carried a trace of killing intent. It was obvious that as long as she nodded, he would kill his way to the emperor's palace to avenge her. Azu was startled. She quickly wiped her face and said, No, I just miss Big Brother Xiao." Naturally, she did not dare to speak of what had just happened. After all, as his daughter-in-law, if he were to learn of it, how could he endure it? Of course, another reason was that Song Qing-shu's martial arts were too high. Even if Xiao Yuanshan knew about it, it would be useless. And once this matter was leaked, it would force Song Qing-shu to have no choice but to kill. She had always been intelligent, so how could she not see through the danger? Naturally, she would not act like a village woman and complain tearfully to the other party. "Then why are you staying in the palace?" Xiao Yuanshan asked curiously. "The emperor won't let me go and put me under house arrest." After thinking about it, Azu could only explain it this way. Xiao Yuanshan's thick eyebrows rose in anger. "Could it be that Yelu Hongji was tempted by your beauty and had improper thoughts towards you?" "No, Yelu Hongji didn't," Azu quickly explained. At the same time, she secretly thought that she was not lying. The one who bullied her was not Yelu Hongji, but Song Qing-shu. "Then I'll save you from the palace now." Xiao Yuanshan stood up and said. He was naturally worried about his daughter-in-law staying in the palace. Who knew what would happen? But, thinking that it was Song Qing-shu who asked her to stay here, Azu immediately hesitated. She had reached an agreement with the other party. To be honest, she did not want to leave, but if she refused, she did not know how to explain it to her father-in-law. "You're worried about dragging Feng into this. Don't worry, this time I found a helper. It won't be long before Feng can be saved." Xiao Yuanshan laughed. "Helper?" Azu was startled, revealing a confused expression. "Qing-shu, come in." Xiao Yuanshan turned to the side and waved towards the window. Very quickly, a figure flashed in. Song Qing-shu bowed to Azu. Song Qing-shu greets sister-in-law. He had just told Xiao Yuanshan to stay outside. Xiao Yuanshan thought that at this time, Azu would most likely be asleep. Letting a young man like him enter his daughter-in-law's bedroom was indeed a bit inconvenient, so he did not refuse. He went in first to let Azu prepare. As for Song Qing-shu, he purposely did not go in. He wanted to test if Azu would reveal any secrets without him around. Luckily, it turned out that his eyesight was not bad. Azu was not a stupid woman. "It's you." Seeing the appearance of the person who came, Azu's expression instantly changed. Xiao Yuanshan patted Song Qing-shu's shoulder without knowing anything. "You didn't expect it, right? With Qing-shu's help, even if it's a dragon's pool or a tiger's den, we can still save Feng." Song Qing-shu seized the opportunity and said, "Of course, Xiao Dage is my sworn brother and sister-in-law. You have shown kindness to me. It can be said that I am duty-bound to help you." While speaking, He quietly winked at Aju, thinking back to her encounter in the Imperial study and hearing him call her sister-in-law. Azu instantly felt that the two words were especially piercing. However, she could not say anything. She understood that he was also hinting at her, so she could only cooperate with him and act. Then I really have to thank young master. At the same time, she was secretly glad that she did not say anything. Otherwise, not only would she not be able to save Brother Xiao, she might even harm Uncle. Let's take advantage of the dark to leave this place. Song Qing-shu knew Azu's worries and took the initiative to suggest. Previously, Azu was worried about him. Now that he agreed, she did not hesitate anymore. After all, she did not want to stay in this cold and quiet palace. The two of them brought Azu out under the cover of the night. Along the way, Azu's expression was solemn. She did not know what Song Qing-shu was planning. However, no matter how hard she racked her brains, she could not guess what he was thinking. She could only follow behind him with a heavy heart. Seeing that there was only one more palace wall before they could leave, Azu suddenly felt a pain in her ankle. She subconsciously cried out, "Ayo!" and her entire body involuntarily fell forward. Song Qing-shu caught her and revealed a smile that was not a smile. Why is sister-in-law walking so carelessly? Seeing his expression, Azu instantly understood who the culprit was. Her teeth itched to the point that she wanted to bite him. The area near the palace wall was the most important part of the palace patrol. Her cry and the sound of her fall had alerted the guards not far away. Who is it? A group of patrolling guards quickly ran over. Xiao Yuanshan turned back to look at Azu. Seeing her tightly knitted brows, he knew that her leg was injured and could not walk anymore. At this time, hearing the commotion, the guard from all directions rushed over. They were clear that if they were to be surrounded, they would be in danger. In this world, no matter how strong the martial arts of the martial arts masters were, if they were surrounded by a large army, they would still die. Xiao Yuanshan immediately made a decision. Qing-shu, bring Azu and leave first. I will bring up the rear. Azu's leg was injured, so the three of them's mobility was greatly reduced. If they wanted to escape, they would be caught sooner or later. It was better to split into two, one to bring up the rear and the other to leave with Azu. Because Azu was his future daughter-in-law, it was not good to let Song Qing-shu stay behind and take the risk. As for the one to stay behind, without Azu's burden, it would be much easier to escape later. All of this was within Song Qing-shu's expectations, so he did not hesitate at all. Okay, we'll meet in the palace later. After saying that, he grabbed Azu's waist and flew out of the palace. Although in my plan, I did not intend to take Azu, but why do I feel that the plot is a little out of control? Let nature take its course. Chapter 1595. What exactly do you want? It was not convenient for Azu to ask in front of Xiao Yuanshan, so the moment they left, she pushed the man beside her away and glared at him. Song Qing-shu was just putting on an act when he brought her over the palace walls. They circled around outside before returning to the palace. Now, the two of them were standing in a tall tower in the palace, quietly watching Xiao Yuanshan fall into the heavy encirclement of the palace guards. I don't want to do anything. It's just that I don't want Xiao Yuanshan to ruin what I'm going to do next. Song Qing-shu replied indifferently. Azu's expression changed. You want to kill him? Song Qing-shu shook his head. He is, after all, Big Brother Zhao's father, so why would I kill him? I just want to injure him a little so that he will stop for a while. You still know that Big Brother Xiao is your sworn brother. Azu angrily pointed at him. Song Qing-shu pushed her hand away and said in a very emotional tone, when one reaches a certain height, one will not be able to act according to one's own preferences. Perhaps you will think that what I said is hypocritical, but this is indeed my true opinion. For the first time, Azu did not say anything because she thought of many things. She thought of how young Master Morong was determined to restore his country. Ever since he could remember, he had no choice but to practice martial arts and recruit heroes. He even had no time to respond to the affection of the outstanding beauty Miss Wang. She thought of how Xiao Feng had been a Han for 30 years, but in the end, he had no choice but to return to the Liao kingdom. She also thought of her biological father, Duan Zhengchen. Although he was a prince and also loved her mother, he could not marry her back to Dali because he needed the support of the Bai tribe behind the princess consort. Azu, you are a very sensible girl. I hope that we can have a good cooperation this time. In 2 years, you can also go with Big Brother Xiao to herd horses and sheep. Song Qingshu stood by the railing with his hands behind his back. The cold night wind blew his clothes, and at this moment, he seemed to have a kind of detachment from the secular world. I hope you keep your word. Aju sighed faintly, full of helplessness of accepting her fate. Will something happen to Uncle Xiao? Seeing more and more guards surrounding them, Azu couldn't help but ask worriedly. Don't worry, with Xiao Yuanshan's martial arts. Escaping won't be a problem. He'll just suffer some injuries. Song Qingshu continued. All right, let's go. Back to the palace? Azu was expressionless. Back to the southern courtyard's king's mansion. As soon as Song Qingshu finished speaking, Azu's eyes lit up. After all, in her heart, that place had become her home. Following that, Song Qingshu glided down from the tower with Azu. Throughout the entire process, Azu was amazed by his qigong and even forgot that he was still holding her waist. Returning to the southern courtyard's king's mansion, Song Qingshu didn't enter from the front door. After all, that would be too conspicuous. Originally, ever since Xiao Feng had been imprisoned, the king's mansion had declined, and the guards were naturally not as strong as before. If it wasn't for the fact that Song Qingshu had specially transferred a group of soldiers to guard the king's mansion to keep an eye on Azu, this place might have already been visited by many thieves. Sister, you're back? A young girl in purple jumped out to welcome them. When she saw Song Qingshu, the smile on her face became even wider. Mas. Brother Song. Originally, she had planned to call him Master, but suddenly realized that calling him that in front of outsiders would cause him trouble. So she changed it at the last minute. In her eyes, only her master was one of them. Sister was naturally an outsider. Back then, Song Qingshu had used soul shift to turn her into his female slave. However, the soul shift technique wasn't that brilliant, so it didn't take long for the effect to disappear. Azi regained her senses as well. At first, she was very angry. After all, she had lost her virginity without even realizing it. However, when she found out how powerful this master of hers was, her anger couldn't help but turn into joy. Growing up in a place like the Sea of Constellations, she admired the strong the most. Not to mention that Song Qingshu was so young and handsome. Especially the longer she stayed in the Central Plains, the more rumors she heard about him. This man who had created so many miracles was like an immortal that had descended into the world. Furthermore, when she heard that he was the dream man of many noble ladies, Z felt a strong sense of danger. Thus, she became even more determined to follow him. That was why her current attitude towards Song Qingshu was no less than when she had been soul shift technique. As for Song Qingshu, as a man, he naturally enjoyed having a young lady who admired him so much. Although he wasn't too fond of Z's viciousness, it didn't matter much to him now. Azu, go back to your room and rest first. I have something to say to Az. Song Qingshu said to Azu. What do you want to do to Az? Azu guarded her little sister behind her vigilantly, as though the person in front of her was just a big, greedy wolf. Seeing her protective look, Song Qingshu couldn't help but laugh. He looked at Az, who was behind her, and said, Az, your older sister asked me what I want to do to you. How should I answer? Az pushed her older sister's hand away and flashed out from behind her. She replied with a smile, Master can do whatever you want, Az. Seeing her younger sister's expression, Azu was instantly confused. Although she had previously guessed the relationship between her younger sister and Song Qingshu, it was still very shocking to hear it with her own ears. What was even more shocking was the way her younger sister addressed him. Why do you call him Master? Az walked to Song Qingshu and slowly knelt down. She hugged his thigh and said coquettishly, I am Master's female slave. What else should I call him if not Master? Azu was completely stupefied. Do you know what kind of person he is? Actually, he's not as righteous as he looks. I know what kind of person Master is better than you, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Moreover, only a person like this can do anything he wants. He's a true powerhouse. Ozzy rolled her eyes. She thought that her older sister was really naive and sweet. If Master was a righteous man, why would she become his female slave? Do father and mother know about this? Azu couldn't help but feel a little distressed when she saw her younger sister acting as if she had taken drugs. So what if they know? So what if they don't? They've abandoned me since I was born. I've never been indebted to them for raising me. Do you think they can interfere with my affairs? Ozzy pursed her lips. If it was before, she would still acknowledge Duan Zhengshun as her father because of his status as the Prince of Jinan. But now that her master was also a prince, and a prince of the Central Plains at that, he had 1,000 miles of fertile land and hundreds of thousands of soldiers under his command. He was far more powerful than a cowardly prince from a remote country who didn't even dare to take a concubine. Naturally, she didn't have to worry so much. Seriously, I can't be bothered with you. Seeing how stubborn Ozzy was, Azu stomped her feet and angrily ran back to her room. After she left, Ozzy crawled up and served him tea. Master, please have a seat. Do you want Ozzy to massage your shoulders? There's no need. Song Qingshu reached out to stop her. I came here this time because I have something for you to do. What is it? Ozzy's eyes brightened. Born in the sea of constellations, she was more mature than the average woman in certain aspects. She knew that she had to display her value at the right time in order to maintain her position in the long run. Even though she prided herself on her beauty, the people by her master's side were all great beauties. This put a lot of pressure on her. Ozzy knew that it would be very difficult for her to gain a place in her master's heart with just her beauty alone. She could only rely on other aspects to gain his favor. Now that she heard that he needed her for something, how could she not be happy? Chapter 1596. I need you to pretend to be Azu. Song Qingshu slowly explained his plan. That's so fun. Zi's eyes lit up when she heard that he wanted her to pretend to be Azu and stay by Xiao Feng's side to monitor him. She was a person who craved for the world to be in chaos. She was so bored in Shangjing City that she almost fell sick. Hearing such an interesting thing, she was naturally excited. Fun? Song Qingshu sneered. This matter is very important. You can't mess it up. You and your sister have different personalities. Can you successfully pretend to be her? This was also the point he was most uncertain about. It should be known that Xiao Feng looked rough, but he was very meticulous. If he was not careful, he would find out the flaw. I don't know anything else, but I'm good at deceiving people. Zi raised her chin and said very proudly. Song Qingshu nodded. He didn't doubt this. After all, she was a weak girl. She was able to maintain her innocence in Xingqiu's sect, which was surrounded by wolves. She relied on her small mouth to deceive people. When he thought that the old fox Ding Chunxiu had been tricked away by him, the divine wood king tripod, Song Qingshu couldn't help but feel a little more confident. Go to your sister's place and find a set of clothes to change into. I'll see how it goes, Song Qingshu ordered. Okay, Zi smiled and left in high spirits. Song Qingshu couldn't help but laugh. Looking at her enthusiasm, there should be no problem with the plan this time. Next, while Zi went to change, he began to perfect the various details of the plan in his mind. He hoped that there wouldn't be any flaws when the time came. Suddenly, he felt something. He raised his head and looked outside the door. He saw a girl in red standing at the door. He frowned slightly. Before he could speak, the girl spoke first. What do you want to do by asking Zi to change into my clothes? Song Qingshu was stunned. Where's Zi? Why isn't she here yet? She's still changing. I asked her what you wanted to do, but she wouldn't tell me. Azu frowned. So I came to ask you. I naturally have something for her to do. As for what it is, I won't tell you. Song Qingshu paused and added, sometimes the less you know, the safer you are. You should have a deep understanding of this saying. He didn't intend to tell her that Zi was pretending to be him. Otherwise, Azu would be worried that she would harm Xiao Feng if she heard about it. Who knew what would happen? No, I can't let you do anything to hurt her. Azu walked over and looked at him with resentment and fear. You obediently listened to my arrangements. That is the best way to protect her. Song Qing-shu replied indifferently, clearly not planning to continue this meaningless conversation with her. Who knew that Azu suddenly burst into laughter. Master, you are so bad. You actually used other people's safety to threaten my sister. Speaking of which, my sister's really stupid. Sure enough, she's the kind of idiot who still pays for the person who sold her. Song Qing-shu. You're Z? Song Qing-shu looked at her in shock. He didn't expect it to be her at all. What do you think? Z's acting is good, right? Z said as she opened her arms and twirled in front of him proudly, completely showing off Azu's clothes and her exquisite curves. Not bad. You look good. Song Qing-shu praised from the bottom of his heart. Suddenly, he thought of something and a playful smile appeared on his face. All right, it's already late. I won't be going back. I'll sleep in your room tonight. Z's expression changed slightly, but she quickly concealed it. Okay, it's Z's greatest honor to serve master. Where's your sister? Song Qing-shu asked curiously. As soon as I entered the room, she asked me all sorts of questions. I was annoyed by the questions, so I sealed her acupuncture point. She should be sleeping soundly now. Z pouted, as if she was quite impatient with her sister. She's been worried for the whole day, and her mind has been exhausted. It's good to seal her acupuncture point to let her rest. Song Qing-shu nodded, obviously agreeing with what she did. Z smiled proudly at his praise and took the opportunity to ask, "Oh right, master, other than passing information to you, is there anything else I need to do when I'm by Xiao Feng's side? What else do you want to do?" Song Qing-shu held her waist with one hand, feeling the slender and warm touch. "Where's your room?" That side. Z lowered her head, and her expression could not be seen clearly for a moment. Don't tell me that I don't need a method to keep Xiao Feng in check. What if he discovers a flaw and knows the truth? How should I restrain him immediately? You can control him? Song Qing-shu laughed involuntarily. Xiao Feng is unrivaled in the world. Do you think you can control him with your mediocre skills? I can use poison, Z said with a smile, and her eyes flashed. With your Xingqiu sect's invisible powder, blissful thorn, heart-destroying bullet, and so on. Song Qing-shu curled his lips in disdain. Z's poison won't work. Master is so powerful. You must have poisons that can deal with him. Z shook his arm and said coquettishly, "Yes, for example, 3 corpse brain divine pill, leopard embryo muscle enhancement pill, and so on." Song Qing-shu answered casually. Z's eyes lit up. "I've heard of these 2 kinds of strange poisons in Xingqiu sect. Is it true that they have no antidote other than the poisoner?" "Of course." Song Qing-shu immediately showed an impatient look. "Didn't I tell you before?" "Really?" Z was shocked and hurriedly changed the topic. "Master, when you're done with your business, will you really let them go to herd horses and sheep outside the Great Wall? Why do you ask?" At this time, the 2 of them had already walked into the room, and Song Qing-shu closed the door. "I'm just curious," Z answered with a smile. "Curious?" Song Qing-shu held her in his arms and conveniently rolled onto the bed. "Compared to that, I'm more curious about your body." There was a hint of panic on Z's face, and she hurriedly said, "Master, don't be anxious. I haven't had time to take a bath today, and I'm very dirty. I'll go take a bath first, then I'll serve master." After saying that, she wanted to get up and leave, but she was pulled back onto the bed by Song Qing-shu. She was struggling to get up, but Song Qing-shu turned over and rode on top of her, pressing her down so that she couldn't move. "I can't wait that long." Song Qing-shu moved closer to her neck and sniffed. "Tis TSK, it smells so good. Which part of you is dirty?" Feeling that he was starting to take off her clothes, a hint of panic flashed in Z's eyes, and she hurriedly grabbed his hand. "Master, you haven't answered my question yet. You're hanging me up, and it's very uncomfortable. Since when did you start negotiating terms with me?" Song Qing-shu's smile disappeared, and he looked at her with a cold expression. Z was shocked, and she hurriedly said, "Master, I was wrong. I hope Master can be magnanimous and forgive me this time." "Forgive?" Song Qing-shu looked at her playfully. "It just so happens that you're angry because of your sister today. How about this? You'll pretend to be your sister and serve me. You must imitate her mentality and behavior. If I see any flaws, I won't forgive you." Hearing his words, Z couldn't help but flash a trace of shame and anger on her face. Chapter 1597. How can you have such a beastly thought? Z stared at him hatefully. Song Qingshu was stunned. Beastly? You used to encourage me to sleep with you and your sister, and you even said that you could help me get your sister. Why are you saying that I'm a beast now? Z was stunned, and then a hint of anger appeared on her face. She muttered to herself, "That damned girl really can't change." "What did you say?" Song Qingshu looked at her in confusion. "Nothing." Z bit her lip and suddenly looked at him with her big eyes. "Do you really have that kind of thought about my sister? I'd be lying if I said I didn't." Song Qingshu smiled slightly. "But I can still distinguish between desire and reason. After all, she's Brother Zhao's woman. I really can't bring myself to lay my hands on her." Hearing him admit that he had designs on her sister, Z couldn't help but blush. She muttered softly, "You've laid your hands on her so many times, and you still say that you can't bring yourself to do it. Why do you like to whisper now?" Song Qingshu said with dissatisfaction. "Nothing, let go of me." Z hurriedly reached out and tried to push the man on top of her away, but unfortunately, her strength was like a clay ox in the sea. It didn't work at all. In the end, she could only clench her hands into fists and keep pounding on the man's chest. Song Qingshu nodded and showed a trace of satisfaction. "Not bad, you're somewhat similar." "What do you mean similar?" "I'm Azu," Z said angrily. Song Qingshu's eyes lit up. "Not bad. Continue the performance. Keep it like this." One of his hands unconsciously reached into her clothes. Z almost fainted. "I'm your sister-in-law. You can't do this." Song Qingshu's smile became wider and wider, his other hand caressing her face gently. "Z, I really didn't realize that you had such superb acting skills." "Yes, just like that. You're able to portray your sister's struggle between physical desire and moral shame." "Song Qingshu, you bastard." Z raised her head and tried to bite him, but unfortunately, her whole body was pressed down, so she could only raise her head to a limited extent and couldn't bite him at all. "I'm Aju, the Aju you just brought back from the palace." Song Qingshu laughed. "Not bad, not bad. You've successfully aroused my desire. That's all." Feeling the oppressive feeling from his body, Z finally panicked. She knew that if she continued like this, she might be carelessly done by him. She hurriedly explained, "Just now, Z came to my room to borrow my clothes. I was puzzled, so I asked her what she wanted to do. In the end, she was very tight-lipped and didn't reveal anything at all. So I sealed her acupoint when she wasn't paying attention and pretended to be her. Wanted to get some information." After saying that, she looked at Song Qingshu nervously, hoping that he would believe her words and let her go. "Oh." Song Qingshu looked like he was deep in thought, but he quickly smiled and said, "Z, Master is very satisfied. You actually made up such a story to please me and make me believe you. I really admire you." Z almost fainted from anger. She shouted, "I'm really Azu. What do I have to do to make you believe me?" Sensing that her tone didn't seem to be fake, Song Qingshu's smile froze. "You're really Really?" Z almost cried. This time, she thought she was smart and came to ask for information. But in the end, she didn't get any information. Instead, she fell into the claws of a wolf again. Looking down at his big hand that reached into her clothes, she wanted to cry but had no tears. "How would you prove it?" Song Qingshu didn't dare to be careless and said in a low voice. Azu almost broke down. She thought to herself, "What is this? Do I need to prove myself?" But now, she couldn't care so much. She hurriedly said, "Previously, when I was in the palace, I wanted to report to Yelu Hongji that Empress Xiao Guanyin was impersonated by someone else. I planned to use this as a condition to save Brother Xiao. In the end, I suddenly found out that Yelu Hongji was also impersonated by someone else. I just didn't expect that person to be you." She quickly told him what happened in the palace. In order to make her words more convincing, she didn't even miss a single detail. She even mentioned the other party's violation of her. Song Qingshu finally understood. That's right. With Azu's personality, she definitely wouldn't tell others about this. Of course, you didn't know. You're really Azu? Hearing this, Azu hurriedly nodded. She was so excited that tears almost flowed down. I really am. Song Qingshu also looked gloomy. Why did you pretend to be Z for no reason? You made everyone feel awkward. Azu turned her face away. Originally, she had a lot of words to scold him, but on second thought, she couldn't blame him. It was her own cleverness that made her suffer. But no matter how considerate she was, it was hard for her to let another man take advantage of her again. For a moment, she felt wronged and her tears fell down. Can you get up now? Feeling the other party's masculine and hot pressure, Azu was flustered. At the same time, she secretly cursed Z half to death. What was the relationship between this girl and Song Qingshu? She usually played so crazily in private. She actually used me to please her lover behind his back. I'm really sorry. Song Qingshu hurriedly got up, but he forgot that his hand was still in her clothes. He used too much strength to get up and directly tore off most of the clothes in front of her chest, revealing a large piece of snow-white and translucent skin. Sorry, I really didn't mean it. Song Qingshu hurriedly turned around and explained with a face of embarrassment. This time, Azu was very calm. She silently sat up, picked up a piece of clothing, and wrapped it around her body. It doesn't matter. Anyway, you've seen it before. Hearing her words, Song Qingshu became more and more embarrassed. Azu stood up and said in a low voice, I'm leaving. After saying that, she hurriedly walked out. When she reached the door, she suddenly stopped. By the way, when you and Z privately make out in the future, don't involve me. After saying that, she left as if she was escaping. Song Qingshu couldn't help but burst into laughter. It seemed that she was a little jealous when she heard that he and Z had secretly played the role-playing game with her. After a while, Azu left and returned again. But unexpectedly, she had changed into a new dress this time. Song Qingshu was stunned. Why did you come back again? Azu laughed. Master, I'm very good at it, right? Even you can't tell the difference between me and my sister. Song Qingshu was speechless. You still have the cheek to say that? Because of your mistake just now, I almost made a big mistake. Z also looked embarrassed. After all, she had always been proud of her wit, but she was actually plotted against by the silly sweet sister that she looked down on. It made her feel extremely embarrassed. However, after taking a look at his expression, Z suddenly trotted over and hugged his arm. She said in a spoiled manner, Didn't I create an opportunity for Master? I'll let Sister throw herself into your arms. How is it, Master? Does she serve you better than Z? Chapter 1598. Sister. Z pursed her lips. I've struggled to survive since I was young, but after a dozen years, a pair of parents and a sister popped out of nowhere. Ha! Anyway, in my heart, they're not as close as Master. Song Qingshu immediately fell silent. When he thought of how much hardship she had suffered growing up in a place like Xingqiu's sect, he couldn't blame her anymore. He reached out and stroked her hair. Little Z, I won't let anyone bully you anymore. Z pouted. I don't want to. Song Qingshu looked at her in confusion. He didn't understand why she refused. Z then moved closer to him and giggled. I love being bullied by Master. Song Qingshu couldn't help but laugh. You're really a little witch. Master, do you want to bully me? I'm wearing my sister's clothes right now. Z licked her lips. Her eyes exuded a hint of charm that was between a young girl and a young married woman. Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. No wonder Azu had to remind him not to drag her into this when he was playing with Z. It seemed like she really had foresight. Suddenly, he looked out of the window thoughtfully and said to Z, It seems like Xiao Yuanshan is back. Take off Azu's clothes and change back into your own. Okay. Z was also clear that this matter had to be hidden from Xiao Feng and his son, so she naturally couldn't wear Azu's clothes. She walked to the side of the wardrobe, and without the slightest scruple of Song Qingshu, she directly took off her clothes, revealing a beautiful young girl's body, and then slowly changed into her own clothes. Song Qingshu knew that this little witch wanted to take the opportunity to seduce him. However, he had important matters to attend to, so he didn't have time to respond to her enthusiasm. Later, remember to tell Xiao Yuanshan that you want to leave. It's best if he misunderstands that you're leaving because of Xiao Feng's downfall. Since he planned to let Z pretend to be Azu, then there must be a reasonable explanation for Z's disappearance. Otherwise, it would easily arouse the suspicion of Xiao Feng and his son. Z seemed to have guessed what he was thinking. She smiled and agreed, no problem. After she changed her clothes, Song Qingshu brought her out and came to the main hall, where he discovered that Azu was bandaging Xiao Yuanshan's wounds. It's no big deal. This old man doesn't care about such a small injury. Xiao Yuanshan pretended to be heroic as he comforted Azu, who was secretly crying at the side. It was just that he was seriously lacking in energy when he spoke, which deeply betrayed him. Uncle, don't talk anymore. Otherwise, the bandaged wound will open again, Azu said in a hurry. Song Qingshu stepped forward and asked, Senior Xiao, how did you suffer such heavy injuries? Although he said this, he was very satisfied in his heart. He had originally wanted to borrow the hands of the palace guards to heavily injure him, so that he would spend the next few days recuperating and not come out to cause trouble, in case it affected his plan. Azu obviously knew about it. Hearing this, she raised her head and glared at him. However, when she met his half-smiling eyes, she couldn't help but think of what had just happened. She hurriedly lowered her head guiltily. At the same time, a faint layer of red rose on her neck. Xiao Yuanshan was careless and naturally didn't notice the exchange between the two of them. Instead, Z, who was at the side, saw it and revealed a thoughtful expression. I can't stay here for long in case someone finds out. The soldiers outside are all Yelu Hongji's dogs. When Xiao Yuanshan spoke, the wounds on his body moved, and he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. I mainly came to see you. Since you are safe and sound, I can rest assured. In the next period of time, I need to find a place to focus on recuperating. I'm afraid I won't be able to take care of you. I can only trouble Qingshu. Z, who was at the side, had a half-smile on her face. She thought to herself, if you let Master take care of your daughter-in-law, wouldn't he have to take care of her until she was in bed? Azu clearly thought of something similar, but she couldn't tell the truth. She could only silently lower her head. Song Qingshu replied with a smile, Senior Xiao, don't worry. I will protect sister-in-law well during this period of time. Hearing his promise, Xiao Yuanshan couldn't help but sigh in relief. Azu and Z, on the other hand, secretly spat. It was rare for sisters with completely different personalities to reach an agreement on the same matter. Z, take care of your sister during this period of time. Xiao Yuanshan was about to leave when he suddenly remembered that Song Qingshu and Azu were men and women. Some things were more suitable for Z to deal with. He had thought that Z would agree immediately. Who knew that she would snort, I'm leaving Shangjing soon. I don't have the time to take care of her. Your brother-in-law and sister are in danger. You're leaving at this time? Xiao Yuanshan's eyebrows instantly raised as if he would slap her at any time. Ever since brother-in-law went to prison, I've stayed here long enough. I've done my best, Z said unconcernedly. She wasn't worried about Xiao Yuanshan at all. After all, there was an omnipotent master beside her. He wouldn't see her being bullied. I heard that an ice silkworm appeared in Jiangnan. If I miss such a rare divine creature, I'm afraid I won't be able to find it again in my lifetime. So what if your Xingqiu sect's unpresentable poison attacks are? When the time comes, phone, and I will teach you 1 or 2 ultimate techniques. Wouldn't that be 100 times better than Xingqiu sect? After being together for so long, Xiao Yuanshan knew that Z stole Ding Chuanqiu's divine, wood king cauldron, and was cultivating poison attacks. The ice silkworm was the best cauldron. Thus, he didn't doubt her words. If your martial arts were useful, you wouldn't have been beaten to this state. Z curled her lips and said with a face full of disdain. Xiao Yuanshan almost choked to death. He thought to himself, do you know how many imperial experts surrounded me today? If it was someone with slightly weaker martial arts, they would have been hacked to death long ago. How could they have survived like me? However, he couldn't bring himself to argue with a little girl. His old face flushed red. Fortunately, Azu, who was at the side, helped him out. Uncle, don't force her. She has her own things to do. I don't need her to take care of me now. Actually, she had also faintly guessed that her sister's departure was just a pretense. Unfortunately, she couldn't and didn't dare to tell Xiao Yuanshan. Xiao Yuanshan snorted coldly and left with a stomach full of anger. Song Qingshu quietly followed behind him. Seeing him climb over the city wall under the cover of the night and head towards the mountains in the suburbs, he knew that he was indeed looking for a place to heal. With his injuries, he won't be able to recover without at least half a month. This period of time is enough. Song Qingshu secretly nodded. After confirming that he wouldn't do anything bad again, he turned around and returned to the southern courtyard's king's mansion. Chapter 1599. Song Qingshu's face darkened. Is that how I am in sister-in-law's heart? Azu replied faintly. Of course not in the past, but now She didn't say it clearly, but the meaning was clear. However, Z's expression turned cold. If Master was really so vicious and merciless, why would he go through so much trouble to directly kill Xiaofeng and his son and drag you into the harem to be trained? Do you have the slightest ability to resist? Song Qingshu glanced at Z in surprise. This girl was becoming more and more likable to him. Azu was so angry that her whole body trembled. She pointed at her and said angrily, "Whose sister are you? How can you talk to your sister like that?" "What sister? I only know that I am Master's little Z." Z made a face and jumped to Song Qingshu's side. She hugged his arm and looked at her as if to show off. All right, stop arguing." Song Qingshu interrupted the sisters' argument. Although Z's words are a little harsh, the meaning is not wrong. If it wasn't for our past relationship, I wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. You should know this the best. Azu opened her mouth, but found that she couldn't refute his words. She had no choice but to remain silent. All right, pack your things and follow me to live in the palace. Song Qingshu ordered. He had to stay in the palace for a period of time. It was a little inconvenient to go back and forth between the palace and the palace. He might as well bring all of them to the palace. Xiao Yuanshan was hiding in the mountains to recuperate, and Xiaofeng was locked up in prison. He wouldn't know where Azu had gone. Okay. Hearing that they were going to the palace, Z instantly became excited. She was originally full of curiosity towards new things, not to mention the palace, which was a place that attracted all the girls in the world. In contrast to Z's excitement, Azu's face was full of worry. Can I stay here? This place felt like home to her. She couldn't eat or sleep in peace in the palace. What do you think? Song Qingshu said indifferently. Previously, I brought you out just to deal with Xiao Yuanshan. Do you really think that you're free now? Azu was at a loss for words and could only turn her head away, feeling wronged. All right, put on your clothes and jewelry. Z, you don't have to. You'll wear Azu's clothes from now on. Also, you've been spending time with her all this time, and you'll be able to imitate her in every detail, Song Qingshu instructed. Okay, Z smiled sweetly. Thinking of the upcoming mission, her eyes glowed with excitement. Why did you ask Z to pretend to be me? Azu finally couldn't help but ask. Previously, when she disguised herself as Z to investigate, she had a vague guess, but she wasn't very sure. What for? The corner of Song Qingshu's mouth revealed a trace of an evil smile. Since I can't get you because of benevolence, righteousness, and morality, then I'll train you to look exactly like you to comfort myself. Can't I? Aziz's eyes lit up. Not only was she not disappointed, but she also wanted to see the world in chaos. Okay. Master, you finally accepted my original suggestion. Azu's face was red with embarrassment. She wanted to strangle this be****starred sister to death, but she didn't think too much because she knew that Song Qingshu's main purpose was to set up a spy around Brother Xiao so that it was convenient to monitor him at any time and not for the boring and dirty purposes that he said. Azu originally wanted to delay the time, but she couldn't resist Z's energetic strength. She quickly packed all her daily belongings, clothes, and jewelry, so that she couldn't find any reason to continue staying here. Soon, Song Qing-shu returned to the palace with the two sisters. Although he had a token to enter and exit the palace at any time, Azu's identity was special. In order to not leave any flaws in the future, he still decided to sneak into the palace with the two sisters. With Azu and Z's poor Qinggong, they probably couldn't even climb over the outermost courtyard wall of the palace, let alone avoid the patrol of the palace guards. Therefore, Song Qing-shu could only carry them in one hand and fly in. Fortunately, Song Qing-shu's Qinggong was good enough, and the two girls were petite and not heavy. Otherwise, it would be really difficult to carry them in and out of the heavily guarded palace at will. Being hugged by him, Z was naturally very willing, while Zhu was obviously very unwilling. But she had no choice. Besides, it was not the first time that she had been hugged by him, so she got used to it as time went by. Song Qing-shu flew in the palace with the two girls in his arms. Feeling the softness of the two girls' bodies, he couldn't help but feel a little proud. Hugging on both sides, and a pair of sisters. TSK, a man should live like this. Sister, Master's evil smile is definitely up to no good. Maybe he's thinking of getting us in a bed together, Z suddenly said with a smile. Hearing her words, Song Qing-shu almost couldn't catch his breath and fell from the sky. He hurriedly glared at her and said, "Don't talk nonsense." At this time, Azu was already blushing, but she couldn't help but think of the scene described by her sister. When she thought of the scene of her waiting for Song Qing-shu in bed with her sister, she felt a little weak in her body. Z, on the other hand, had a mouth that couldn't stop chattering like a little bird. Master, if you hug my sister and me at the same time, who feels better?" Azu finally couldn't stand it anymore and glared at her fiercely. "No one will think you're mute if you don't speak." It's none of your business." Z raised her chin, obviously not taking her threat seriously. Of course, Song Qing-shu wouldn't answer such a boring question, but he couldn't help but secretly compare in his heart. The two sisters' figures were very similar, but there were still some differences. Z's small waist was full of elasticity and vitality, which was the youthful aura of a young girl, while Azu's waist was slightly more plump and soft, which should be the unique charm of the Jianghan River. "Master, don't be so serious. Looking at your expression, you must be comparing us secretly." Z giggled. Song Qing-shu's face heated up, and he couldn't help but snort. "Do you believe that I won't sew your mouth up if you say one more word?" Azu turned her face away and pretended not to hear the conversation between the two, but she was a little curious in her heart. In his heart, who was better, me or Z? Although she knew that she shouldn't have this kind of thought, she was a woman after all, and comparing was also a woman's nature. However, looking at the secretive look on Song Qing-shu's face, it was obviously impossible for him to know the answer. Noticing her expression, Z rolled her eyes and said, "Sister, don't worry. In Master's heart, you're definitely better than me." "Why?" Azu turned her head and asked subconsciously, but as soon as she said it, she was annoyed. Didn't this mean that she had always been concerned about this matter? Chapter 1600. Azu hated the fact that there was no medicine for regret in this world. Otherwise, why would she ask and listen to her when she knew that she had nothing good to say? Song Qing-shu saw that Z was going overboard, so he sealed her mute acupoint. "Then you'll stop." Z's eyes kept blinking as though they could speak. However, Song Qing-shu wasn't moved at all. He turned to Azu and said, "Sister-in-law, don't take her nonsense to heart." Azu's face turned red. "What else can I do?" she mumbled, "Imachim." After this little interlude, Song Qing-shu had already brought the two sisters to their destination. This time, they didn't choose the place where Azu was. After all, it was better to be safe than sorry, in case Xiao Yuanshan came looking for them again. "You two sisters can stay in this palace. I will arrange some palace maids and eunuchs for you tomorrow." Song Qing-shu let go of the two girls and unsealed Z's mute acupoint at the same time. "During this time, you will stay by your sister's side. Be inseparable from her. Make sure to imitate every detail. Z pouted. Inseparable? What if I want to be intimate with Master? Song Qingshu secretly wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Looking at Azu's gaze, he really felt that he wouldn't be able to clear his name even if he jumped into the Yellow River. Before he could answer, Z said, I got it. I'll let my sister watch from the side. Anyway, I don't mind. Azu. Song Qingshu. Azu finally couldn't stand it anymore. Does this have anything to do with whether you mind or not? Speaking of which, you're a girl. Why are you so shameless? What's wrong with that? Where I come from, girls will take the initiative to express their love to the man they like. Z said matter-of-factly. Only then did Azu remember that she had grown up in the remote sea of constellations. That place could be considered a nomadic area, so she would naturally be influenced by the habits of the grassland tribes. She couldn't help but feel her heart soften. You guys can familiarize yourselves with this place first. I still have things to do, so I'll be leaving first. I'll come see you guys tomorrow. Looking at the pair of sisters with completely different personalities, Song Qingshu wisely decided to leave. Then you have to come earlier tomorrow. Z knew that she couldn't make him stay tonight, so she could only blink her eyes and look at him with a wronged expression. Contrary to her expectations, Azu prayed in her heart that he would never come again. I'll try my best. Song Qingshu pulled Z aside and reminded her secretly, you'd better be smart. Don't let your sister control you like before. You two look so alike. If she pretends to be you again, I might not be as lucky as I was today to be able to tell you apart. I know. Today was just an accident. Z was obviously very unhappy that she had failed miserably today. However, as she pondered over the other party's words, her eyes suddenly rolled. Master, you really knew that it was my sister who pretended to be me from the beginning. Did you take the opportunity to take advantage of her openly? Song Qingshu was speechless. What nonsense are you talking about? I only found out later. All right. Let's not talk about this anymore. The main thing is that I need to set up a secret code with you, in case I can't tell when she pretends to be you. Z giggled. There's no need to set up a secret code. You just need to touch her body, and you'll be able to tell. I won't resist any violation from Master. Obviously, my sister is different. Song Qingshu was stunned. Indeed, this was the best way to tell. Noticing Z's teasing gaze, even though he was thick-skinned, he couldn't take it anymore. Anyway, be smart. He then hurriedly left. After he was far away, Song Qingshu secretly heaved a sigh of relief. This little girl is really bewitching. Thinking of how she deliberately mentioned the two sisters together every time, he felt his nose getting hot. He hurriedly restrained his thoughts. I've sinned. Knowing that he might not be able to resist going back if he continued to think about it, and that he would really make a big mistake, Song Qingshu silently recited the heart-cleansing mantra a few times. When he felt that his tumbling emotions had calmed down, he then walked towards concubine Huey's chamber. Originally, he had planned to look for Shin Bijuan to explain some things to her, but he was interrupted by Xiao Yuanshan. He could only deal with him first. Now that he was finally free, he couldn't forget the agreement with Shin Bijuan. Ever since Song Qingshu left, Shin Bijuan sat in the chamber in a daze. The whole thing felt like a dream to her. She didn't expect that the Zhao Wei she relied on was actually the same person as the world-famous Song Qingshu. She was pleasantly surprised, but also a little terrified. She didn't know what kind of fate she would face next. It was already late at night, and Shin Bijuan couldn't take it anymore, so she returned to bed. Because she had an appointment with someone later, she wouldn't carelessly take off her clothes and just lay on the bed with her clothes on. If he is Song Qingshu, then who was the one I saw at the Wei Palace previously? No wonder that Song Qingshu told me to rely on Zhao Wei. They must be in cahoots. It's so annoying that I was the only one who was kept in the dark. They must have been watching me make a fool of myself at that time. I don't know if what he said about being entrusted by my father before he died is true. Will he help me take revenge? My father entrusted me to him. I don't know if he has any other intentions. Shin Bijuan lay on the bed with all kinds of thoughts, but in the end, she couldn't resist the strong sleepiness and gradually fell asleep. When Song Qingshu came over, he naturally wouldn't alarm the palace maids outside. He quietly entered her bedroom and saw the scene of her sleeping in spring. Her long hair was like a waterfall, and her skin was snow white. The corners of her mouth were slightly raised, forming a natural sweet smile. However, the slight frown on her face revealed the worry in her heart. Under the illumination of the candlelight, her pink lips emitted a moist glow like the freshest flower petals stained with dew in the morning. Just one look at them would make one want to kiss them. She was indeed the number one beauty in the martial arts world, in the world of the deer-cutting knife. Song Qing-shu was used to seeing beauties, but he still couldn't help but be stunned by her perfect appearance. It was no wonder that she was famous in this world at such a young age and was appointed as the crown princess. If the crown prince had seen her with his own eyes, he wouldn't have given up on her so easily. It could only be said that he didn't have the luck to have such a femme fatale. Shin Bijuan didn't know what she was dreaming about, but she let out an unusually sweet murmur. Song Qing-shu was already hot from being made hot by the sisters, and when he heard this murmur, he almost lost control of his mind. Knowing that he might turn into a werewolf if he continued like this, Song Qing-shu hurriedly coughed and deliberately made sound. Who is it? Shin Bijuan's mind had been tense during this period of time. When she heard the movement, she immediately woke up. When she saw a man standing by the bed, she was so scared that she hurriedly shrank to the corner of the wall with a horrified expression. Song Qing-shu helplessly spread his hands. Am I that scary? Chapter 16:01. It's okay. Song Qing-shu comforted her. After all, anyone who woke up in the middle of the night to find someone standing by the bed would already be considered very mentally strong if she didn't scream in fear. Are you done with your business? Shin Bijuan thought about it, but she also felt that it was a bit inappropriate to take off the blanket. Although she was still wearing clothes, it would be too rude to stay under the blanket. Her many years of education as a young lady had never taught her how to face a scene like this. She couldn't help feeling conflicted. Song Qing-shu was stunned for a moment, then realized that she was referring to dealing with Xiao Yuanshan and Azu. He couldn't help but smile and say, "It's done." Noticing her awkward and hesitant expression, Song Qing-shu said considerately, "You don't have to get up. Let's just talk about it." Okay, Shin Bijuan nodded gratefully, thinking that he was really considerate. At the same time, she secretly sized up the famous Golden Snake King. Is there something on my face? Seeing that she kept looking at him tentatively, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but laugh. Shin Bijuan was instantly embarrassed. I'm just a little curious. Actually, you don't have to be so restrained. We've been together for so long. Song Qing-shu took the opportunity to sit down by the bed, as if he didn't treat himself as an outsider. Shin Bijuan quietly glanced at the bedside, but didn't stop him. She couldn't help but widen her eyes as she pondered the meaning of his words. Are you really Zhao Wei? Song Qing-shu smiled slightly and began to imitate Zhao Wei's voice again. I was busy before, so I couldn't identify myself. Please forgive me, Miss Shun. It's really you. Hearing that familiar voice, Shin Bijuan no longer had any doubts. The one I saw at the Wei mansion that day. Song Qing-shu instantly understood what she was asking and explained with a smile. That was a joke made by one of my companions. I hope you don't mind. Mississippi, why would I mind? Shin Bijuan pursed her lips into a smile. Young master, there is no need to be so formal. Just call me Bijuan. Song Qing-shu was surprised. In this world, especially in the Song dynasty, women's names were usually only known to the people closest to them. If he agreed to be called by his name, it meant that they were close to each other. It seemed that he hadn't wasted his time trying to make a good impression on Song Qing-shu. That's good. You don't have to call me young master. You can call me Brother Song. Yes, big Brother Song. Shin Bijuan's voice was as soft as a mosquito's. Her face was also red. She also found it strange. When she was with Zhao Wei, he clearly wasn't like this. Why was it that he was still the same person? Now, that his status was different, the feeling he gave her was different? You must have been very worried recently. Because I couldn't free myself, I didn't come to look for you. Song Qing-shu was a little apologetic. She, a little girl, had experienced a great change, falling from the clouds to the dust. Her family was destroyed, and she was a weak girl in the depths of the palace with no relatives. Who knew how much fear and terror she had experienced during this period of time? I'm already very happy to be able to see you in the end. As the two of them talked, Shun Bijuan slowly calmed down. His tone was no different from Zhao Wei's, which made her feel even more at ease. However, as soon as she said this, she regretted it. It sounded like she was acting coquettishly, of course. Song Qing-shu didn't think too much about it. This time, I came to find you because I have something to tell you. Something. Shin Bijuan's heart skipped a beat when she heard this. Not only was she incomparably beautiful, but she was also famous for being a talented woman. She was naturally smart, and she could tell that he was leaving just by saying that. Note, the previous chapter's title was wrong. It should have been Spring Sleep. This chapter is Phoenix Falls into the Cold Palace. Seeing her expression darken, Song Qing-shu naturally understood what was going on. He explained, I'm really sorry, but now is not the time to save you. I hope Bijuan can understand. Shin Bijuan forced a smile. In any case, the situation can't get any worse. It doesn't matter if I understand or not. Song Qing-shu knew that she had misunderstood. The situation is not as bad as you think. I just want you to stay in the palace for a while. I will come back to pick you up in a few months. You came to pick me up? Hearing these words, Shin Bijuan's face reddened slightly. Why did it feel like a husband was saying these words to his wife? However, this kind of feeling didn't make her feel disgusted. Instead, it made her feel an indescribable warmth. Suddenly, she thought of something and hurriedly said, Can you take me out of the palace first? I can find a small room to settle down and wait for you there. Saying such words was already extremely bold for her, because to a certain extent, it also represented a kind of promise. It went without saying what it meant for a woman to be willing to wait for a man to come back and pick her up. What happened to her during this period of time made her understand that in this chaotic world, a weak woman had no ability to protect herself. A beautiful face would not bring her any happiness, but would only bring her endless disasters, unless she could find a man who could help her. Unless she could find a strong enough man to rely on. Originally, she could have chosen Xiao 11 Lang, but for some reason, she would occasionally think of that zither player who had gone through thick and thin with her, the man her father had entrusted to her before his death. Now that she found out that the man she could not forget was the world-shaking Song Qing-shu, she was both shocked and pleasantly surprised. After all, she had heard many legends about this person in her boudoir. At the time, she had only thought of him as a figure of myth. She hadn't expected that he would overlap with a real man, so a different kind of feeling arose. But it wasn't necessarily love. A more appropriate description would be a kind of worship, a kind of attachment and gratitude for saving her life. Hearing her request, Song Qing-shu's brow furrowed. He shook his head. No, it's not safe outside the palace. He didn't make it too obvious because he was worried that she would be embarrassed. After all, with her beauty that could topple nations and her lack of ability to protect herself, it was easy for her to attract all kinds of wild bees and butterflies. How could she possibly wait for him to pick her up? Unexpectedly, Shun Bijuan hurriedly said, The palace is even more dangerous. Song Qing-shu was taken aback. Looking at her awkward expression, he suddenly laughed. You're worried about Yelu Hongji, right? Yes. Shin Bijuan nodded. Last time, I had your help, but if he comes again after you leave, what can I do? Before, she had no choice. In order to avenge the Shun family, she could only lower herself and enter the palace as a concubine. But now that she had met Song Qing-shu, how could she be willing to give herself to that Yelu Hongji? Don't worry, Yelu Hongji will not come to find you now, Song Qing-shu explained with a smile. And now that Yelu Isin has rebelled, and you were recommended by Xiao Xiaoma of Yelu Isin's faction, you will naturally be implicated. In 2 days, the edict to banish you to the Cold Palace will come. Cold Palace? A trace of panic appeared on Shun Bijuan's delicate face. Although she wasn't a true imperial concubine, the Cold Palace was an inauspicious place for any woman. Don't worry, it's only temporary, and it's mainly to protect you. Song Qingshu hurriedly comforted. Shen Bijuan gradually calmed down. Thinking of the desolate cold palace was better than living in the harem in fear. But what if Yalu Hongji has a sudden impulse and summons me to serve him in bed? As someone who had almost become the crown concubine, she had naturally read the history of the harem. Although there weren't many, there had been concubines who had been banished to the cold palace and made a comeback. She was worried that Yalu Hongji would come to find her again. After all, she knew how dangerous her appearance was. Chapter 1602. Song Qingshu thought that Yalu Hongji would summon you to serve him in bed unless the world was haunted. Don't worry, he won't bother you again, trust me. Shen Bijuan looked up at him and felt that there was a reassuring power in his voice. However, she was not a woman who would blindly follow him. After all, everything he said conflicted with common sense. But the power of heaven is unpredictable. Yalu Hongji is the emperor after all, who can control his mind. Song Qingshu knew that she still had doubts and couldn't help but smile. Others may not be able to, but that doesn't include me. Shen Bijuan was stunned. She recalled that when Yalu Hongji came to visit her, he easily resolved the crisis. It seemed that he was not lying. I'm more powerful than you can imagine, but there are some things I can't tell you. Song Qingshu paused, thinking about how to phrase it. You should understand that sometimes knowing too much will bring you disaster. Given his relationship with Shen Bijuan, he could not tell her all his secrets. He could not tell her that the current Yalu Hongji was him, so he could only remind her indirectly. Of course, I'm afraid no one in this world understands this better than me. Shen Bijuan's flawless face showed a trace of bitterness. After all, the Shen family had been destroyed because of the secret of the deer cutter. You don't have to worry when you get to the cold palace. Your food and clothing will be the same as now. In addition, I will arrange for people to take care of you in secret. If you need help, you can look for them. Song Qingshu was a little worried about leaving her alone in the cold palace, so he planned to let Su Quan and Zhao Min take care of her in the palace. Shen Bijuan was secretly shocked. Judging from Zhao Wei's tone, it was as if the imperial palace was his home. However, she was smart enough not to pursue the matter. Instead, she chose to believe him. Whether it was the Golden Snake King's reputation or her interactions with Zhao Wei, she knew that he was not someone who would speak without thinking. By the way, you will probably stay in the cold palace for a few months. How do you plan to spend it? Song Qingshu suddenly asked. Although he could arrange for Zhao Min and Su Quan to look after her, the two of them had to deal with the overall situation on Liao's side. He was afraid that they would not have much time to chat with her to relieve her boredom. It's almost the same as when I was in the Shen Garden. I usually read books and play the guqin. Time should pass very quickly. Shen Bijuan smiled warmly, but there was a flash of worry between her brows. Even though she had lived in seclusion in the Shen Garden, she had her parents to accompany her at that time. She would occasionally meet up with a few of her close friends in the city, and sometimes she would even be invited to participate in poetry meetings. It was definitely much more interesting than the loneliness of the cold palace. Shen Bijuan was a beautiful woman. Although she was the young miss of a rich family, she didn't have the temper of a young miss. She understood that the other side had already helped her a lot, so she didn't want to bother the other side with such a small matter. It's not as easy as you say. Song Qingshu chuckled, as if he had seen through her insincere words. Do you want to learn martial arts? Martial arts? Shen Bijuan had a difficult expression. It's not elegant for a girl to wield a sword or a spear. Song Qingshu laughed involuntarily. She had the same thoughts as Wang Yuyan. Were all the young misses of Jiangnan like this? However, Shen Bijuan suddenly thought of what she had been through recently. If she knew martial arts, how could she have fallen to such a pitiful state? She raised her head and her eyes were filled with hope. But I want to learn. Song Qingshu looked at her with some surprise. He hadn't expected that she would change her mind, but he had originally planned on teaching her martial arts, not to make her a martial arts master, but to give her some ability to protect herself. Otherwise, with such a beauty that could topple nations, without the protection of her family, she might be bullied by hooligans outside. That would be a pity. The other purpose was to find something for her to do, so that she would not be bored alone in the cold palace during this period of time. If she became extremely extreme, it would really be a waste of heaven's masterpiece. He had been in the imperial palace for so long, and he had heard many stories of women who were banished to the cold palace eventually becoming crazy. For a young miss like you, I won't teach you any external martial arts. I don't want calluses to form on your delicate hands. Then it will be too late for regrets. Song Qingshu's joking words caused Shen Bijuan's face to instantly turn red. Big Brother Song is a world-famous expert. Everything is up to Big Brother Song. Shen Bijuan bowed. At the same time, she thought about what he had meant. Could it be that he didn't want to? All martial arts are based on internal energy. I will first teach you internal energy. First, remember the chant. Song Qingshu slowly recited. Madam's body contains the principles of heaven and earth. That is why heaven and earth nourish all things, and that is why heaven and earth fill the world. The vastness of heaven and earth is not obscured by all things. Shen Bijuan's eyes widened. She focused as she recited the chant. After Song Qingshu finished reciting it, he asked, "How much do you remember?" "I should remember most of it." Shen Bijuan's red lips moved slightly as she repeated the chant. Madam's body contains the principles of heaven and earth. Song Qingshu looked at her with surprise. Bijuan is truly a famous, talented woman. There aren't many people in the world who can compare to you in terms of knowledge. Shen Bijuan blushed. On one hand, she was shy, but on the other hand, she was happy after being praised. Can I record these chants? After all, I can only memorize them for a short period of time. If I take too long, I'm afraid I'll miss something. Although she wasn't a martial artist, she had heard that the secret manuals of many sects were extremely important. They could only be passed down by word of mouth and couldn't be written down. This was because they were afraid that their secret manuals would be leaked, so she was very nervous when she made this request. No problem. Just record it down. Song Qingshu faintly smiled. What he passed on to her was the Chuanjin sect's golden jade lock technique. Of course, he had many more powerful techniques in his hands. However, since Shen Bijuan was cultivating alone in the cold palace, the golden jade lock technique was a bit safer. Although its power was lacking, it was orthodox and had a solid foundation. It was neutral and peaceful, so there wasn't any danger in cultivating it. It wasn't like other martial arts, where it was easy to go berserk if one wasn't careful. As for why he had the golden jade lock technique, whether it was from intimidating the Chuanjin sect or from Cheng Yaojia, it wasn't difficult to obtain the Chuanjin sect's introductory technique. Shen Bijuan's heart trembled when she saw his smile. She hurriedly lowered her head and began to record down the chant. At the same time, she sighed inwardly. No wonder Song Qingshu had so many outstanding women by his side. Apart from his appearance, status, character, and martial arts, his attentiveness and consideration were the rarest. As intelligent as she was, how could she not understand why he wanted her to learn martial arts? He was worried that she would be lonely deep in the palace. Chapter 1603. A trace of hesitation flashed across Shen Bijuan's face. She used to have many close friends in the martial arts world, such as Lu Wushuang. She had once heard them mention that acupoint sealing techniques couldn't be easily taught. Usually, it could only be passed down from parents to children, masters to male disciples, and masters to female disciples. This was because there was bound to be some physical contact during the process. Does he have other intentions for making such a suggestion? As a young miss of a wealthy family, especially a beautiful one at that, she had been taught to guard against men and women from a young age. She had to avoid men with bad intentions who approached her. However, when she looked up at Song Qingshu, she didn't see any lustful intentions in his eyes. After a moment of hesitation, she nodded in agreement. Okay, then I'll have to trouble Brother Song. Song Qingshu didn't expect that she had already gone through an intense psychological struggle. He came from the future, and his understanding of the precautions between men and women was completely different from the people of this world. This was the result of decades of subtle influence and even now, he hadn't changed it. Put down the blanket. Otherwise, it'll be hard to do it with the blanket between us. Song Qingshu hesitated for a moment, then half-jokingly said, "Don't tell me you're not wearing anything under the blanket?" Shen Bijuan's face reddened. "I'm wearing." As she spoke, she took off the blanket. She had only taken off the outermost layer of clothing. She was still wearing a few layers underneath. If it was in the past, she would never appear like this in front of a man, even if it was just a jacket. But now, she didn't mind at all. She even asked, "Do you still want to take it off?" Hearing her words, Song Qingshu almost had a nosebleed. It was this kind of woman who was usually pure and conservative. When she suddenly seduced you, it was the most charming. "If you're willing to take it off, I don't mind." Song Qingshu rubbed his nose and smiled strangely. Only then did Shen Bijuan realize that her words had a different meaning. She had only been thinking about whether it was better to have as few obstacles as possible when unblocking acupoints. She hadn't thought about the other side. Only when she heard the other side's strange tone did she realize, I didn't mean it that way. Seeing that she was so anxious that she was about to cry, Song Qingshu felt that it was very interesting. He also knew that if he continued to talk about it, this thin-skinned young lady might not be able to bear it. So he hurriedly changed the topic to resolve her embarrassment. "All right, that's enough. You should concentrate and calm down, and carefully remember the route of true qi circulation." After he finished speaking, he pressed a finger on an acupoint on her neck. Shen Bijuan felt a warm current flow from her shoulder into her body. That warm feeling was so comfortable that she almost couldn't help but moan. But she immediately realized something and bit her lip, afraid that she would make a sound that would embarrass her. However, Song Qingshu seemed to have guessed her current predicament and said timely, "Don't be distracted. Now you have to put all your energy into remembering the route of qi circulation. If you make any mistakes, you will be paralyzed or even killed on the spot." "I know." Shen Bijuan's heart trembled. Although she didn't know martial arts, she knew that cultivating internal strength was not child's play. Feeling that her body was still a bit stiff, Song Qingshu frowned and said, "It's still not enough. You have to completely open your body and mind. Don't suppress your feelings. If you want to cry out, then cry out. Don't be distracted by controlling it." Shen Bijuan's face turned bright red. How could she do that? However, seeing the seriousness in Song Qingshu's eyes, she knew that he didn't have any other intentions. She could only nod her head with a red face. Seeing that she finally understood what he meant, Song Qingshu continued to seal the acupoints all over her body. Streams of true qi were continuously injected into her body, first opening up her blocked meridians, and then using true qi to strengthen and nourish her meridians so that they would not return to their original state. It had to be said that such a beautiful woman was truly blessed by the heavens. Not only was she devastatingly beautiful, but her aptitude for martial arts was also much better than that of ordinary people. If she had started practicing martial arts from a young age, perhaps there would be another famous heroine in this world. The entire process was much easier and faster than expected. Song Qingshu withdrew his finger. "Have you memorized the route of true qi circulation?" "I haven't completely memorized it yet." "Can I do it again?" Shen Bijuan's voice was as soft as a mosquito's, and she was a bit embarrassed. Her answer was beyond Song Qingshu's expectations. After all, in his opinion, memorizing the vital energy circulation route was much easier than memorizing the entire incantation. In the end, she had memorized the incantation, but not the vital energy circulation route. At this time, Shen Bijuan's heart was also incomparably complicated. In the beginning, she had been prepared for him to touch her entire body. After all, her acupoints were all over her body. But what surprised her was that when he touched some of the more sensitive acupoints, his fingers didn't touch her body. Instead, he pressed down on the air. This made her feel both surprised and touched, and her favorable impression of Song Qingshu increased greatly. She thought to herself that the rumors were not to be believed. Although the rumors said that he was a playboy, It seemed that he was more of a gentleman than a gentleman. However, she quickly realized that these two things didn't conflict. Only a gentleman like this could make so many outstanding women willingly stay by his side. Song Qing-shu didn't know that his unintentional actions had increased Shin Bijuan's favorable impression of him. He was wondering why someone as smart as Shin Bijuan couldn't memorize the route of true qi circulation when he suddenly had a flash of inspiration. He finally understood. Shin Bijuan had never learned martial arts and didn't recognize the acupoints on her body. Normal martial artists only needed to remember which acupoints the true qi flowed through, but she had to spend 10 times the effort to memorize the complicated route in her mind. It was my negligence. This time, I'll teach you how to recognize the acupoints on your body. That way, you'll get twice the result with half the effort, Song Qing-shu said apologetically. Shin Bijuan nodded. I'll trouble big brother Song. Song Qing-shu nodded. He began to transfer true qi into her body while explaining the names of the acupoints the true qi passed through. But very quickly, Song Qing-shu was stunned. Earlier, he had been so focused on opening her meridians that he hadn't been distracted. Now that he was doing it again, he suddenly realized that because all of Shin Bijuan's meridians had been opened, she was covered in fragrant sweat. Her clothes were completely soaked, and her bra was tightly pressed against her chest. He could faintly see 2 mountains that looked like they were made of snow. He could faintly see the scenery at the top of the mountain. Only the purest and most flawless young woman would have such a pure color. Song Qing-shu was absent-minded for a few seconds before he moved his gaze away with difficulty. He felt ashamed in his heart and hurriedly continued to hold his breath and focus on explaining to her. Her alluring curves from her waist down were naturally graceful and beautiful. This was especially true for young women. It was enough to intoxicate any man and make them lose themselves. Because her clothes were soaked in sweat, her delicate skin could be seen with the naked eye. Because she had to open her acupoints, Shin Bijuan was already standing on the bed. Her legs were naturally close together. Song Qing-shu felt as if his gaze could pierce through her thin silk dress. Her long and slender legs were thin and straight. He didn't need to see them to know that they had a milky luster. Chapter 1604. In truth, it wasn't just Song Qing-shu who had lost his composure. Shin Bijuan wasn't any better right now. At the very beginning, when he unblocked her acupoints for the first time, her breathing had obviously quickened. Later on, there were even hints of coquettish moans mixed in with the rapid breathing. She also felt embarrassed and wished that there was a hole in the ground to hide in. However, when she quietly opened her eyes, she found that he did not reveal any abnormalities. There was only seriousness and concentration in his eyes. Her embarrassment subsided a little. It was because she was distracted by this feeling that she didn't remember the diagram of the flow of Jinqi. Otherwise, with her intelligence, even if she didn't know acupoints, it would be 10 times more difficult for her to remember, but it still wouldn't be a problem for a talented woman like her. Therefore, she had no choice but to ask Song Qing-shu to teach her again. On one hand, she really couldn't remember it, and on the other hand, even though she was too embarrassed to say it out loud, she had to admit that when the other party's fingers slid across the surface of her skin, her body would tremble slightly, and her heart would beat wildly. She felt a feeling that she had never felt before, a feeling that came from the deepest part of her soul. It made her flustered, but at the same time, it made her feel an indescribable joy and irresistible desire. Unfortunately, the heavens weren't in her favor. At that moment, the rooster crowed in the distance. The two of them immediately woke up from that mysterious state. Song Qing-shu hastily took off his jacket and draped it over her. His voice was a bit hoarse as he said, "Did you remember it clearly this time?" Shin Bijuan had long since fallen to her knees on the bed. She lowered her head and grunted, not daring to look at him. The two of them tacitly didn't mention what had just happened. From Song Qing-shu's current angle, he could see her neck. Her snow-white skin was suffused with a faint pink. He knew in his heart that it would be difficult to avoid making a mistake if he continued to stay here. So he quickly said, Practice this internal energy well during this period of time. When you're almost done, I should kind of pick you up." He hurriedly left after leaving these words. Seeing his slightly disheveled figure, Shun Bijuan couldn't help but smile. It seems he isn't like the rumors. At this moment, a sudden gust of cold wind blew over. She subconsciously shivered and looked down. Only then did she realize that her clothes were completely drenched. At this moment, there wasn't much difference between her and not wearing any clothes. Shin Bijuan finally understood why Song Qingshu had left with a red face. She was so embarrassed that she quickly covered her head with the blanket. "This is so embarrassing, so embarrassing." As she tossed and turned in bed, she suddenly felt his clothes. Only then did Shun Bijuan remember that he had just draped them over her body. Her heart warmed, and after hesitating for a long time, she slowly moved her face into his clothes. Smelling his lingering scent, she couldn't help but fall into a daze. Song Qingshu left concubine Hui Palace in a hurry. He suddenly realized that he was running away. In that situation just now, he could have stayed there for the night if he played some tricks. Shaking his head, Song Qingshu dispelled this tempting thought. Shin Bijuan was still of great use to him. It wasn't a wise choice to get involved with her now. Moreover, he wasn't a rash young man who had never seen a woman before. He still had this little bit of self-control. After walking for a while, he suddenly stopped and hesitated where to go. Thinking that Zhao Min was probably still asleep from exhaustion, he finally decided to go to Zi's place. As for the fact that it was already dawn and he had to go to court, he threw it to the back of his mind. In any case, Yalu Hongji was also a fatuous ruler, so it was normal for him to not go to court. He had been tossing and turning all night, so he needed to take this opportunity to have a good sleep. Even though it was almost dawn, Song Qingshu used so close, yet world apart, so the patrolling guards couldn't find him at all. Not long after, he arrived at Zi's palace. Pushing open the window and leaping into the room, Song Qingshu couldn't help but chuckle. There were many small traps set up around the windows and door, obviously to prevent uninvited guests from breaking in. Suddenly, he couldn't help but feel a little sorry for Zi. Zi grew up in the sea of constellations. These little tricks to protect me must have been ingrained into her bones. Everyone usually only saw her viciousness, but they didn't expect her to survive in that kind of environment. How could she not be a little cruel? When he came to the window, he was suddenly a little dumbfounded. He realized that the one lying on the bed wasn't Zi, but as a no, it should be two Azus. Which one is Zi? Song Qingshu couldn't be sure. Usually, he could tell from the look in their eyes and their clothes. But now, both sisters had their eyes closed and were sleeping in the same sweet position. He really couldn't tell who was who. "It doesn't matter. I'll know once I try." Song Qingshu reached out his hand and gently stroked one of their cheeks. He nervously watched her reaction after she woke up. If anything went wrong, he would immediately hit her sleeping acupoint and make her think that it was just a dream when she woke up tomorrow. The young girl opened her eyes in a daze. She was shocked to see someone else beside her bed, but when she saw the other person's face, her shock turned into surprise. "Master!" Song Qingshu secretly let out a sigh of relief. It seemed he didn't find the wrong person. Otherwise, it would really be a little awkward. "Why are you sleeping on the same bed as Azu?" he asked in a low voice. There were quite a lot of rooms in this palace. There was no need for them to squeeze onto the same bed. Zi looked at him doubtfully. "Didn't you tell me to be inseparable from Big Sister and imitate her every word and action? Of course, that includes sleeping together." Song Qingshu slapped his forehead. Only now did he remember that he did mention it. He just didn't expect her to carry it out so thoroughly. "Follow me to the room next door. I need your service." Song Qingshu picked Zi up and felt that the young girl's body was as light as a swallow. Ever since he practiced the Joy Zen of Tantra, he found that his body had become different from ordinary people. To some extent, it could be said that he was gifted. His needs in that area were a little stronger than those of ordinary people. He had played with Zhao Min for a long time in the afternoon, but then he was teased by Azu, her sister, and Shin Bijuan again and again. Now his body was unbearably hot. It was not convenient to look for the other girls, so after thinking about it, he decided to look for the little demon girl, Z. Hearing his words, Z's eyes seemed to be shining. Hee, Z loves it when Master bullies me. Her words were like thunder that ignited the fire. Song Qingshu wanted to do her on the spot. Seeing that he was going to carry her out, Z put her arms around his neck and whispered in his ear, "Why do we have to go next door? Isn't it good here?" Song Qingshu looked at Azu and frowned. "Your sister is still there." Z giggled. "Even I don't mind." "Why do you mind, Master?" Song Qingshu was speechless. "This has nothing to do with whether you mind or not. I'm obviously talking about Azu." Chapter 1605. Seeing that Song Qingshu was silent, Z giggled again. "How many men dream of having sisters in the same bed? Master, how can you miss it?" Song Qingshu's nose became hot. He was really tempted by what she said, but he quickly shook his head and said, "Your sister is my sister-in-law. I won't touch her. TSK, she's not married to Xiaofeng. How can she be his sister-in-law?" Z curled her lips in disdain. Seeing that he really thought so, she rolled her eyes and tried another way to tempt him. "Even if you don't touch her, you can stay. It's so exciting to play with your sister next to your sister." Seeing that her words were getting more and more outrageous, Song Qingshu couldn't help but give her a slap on the butt. "All right, you're still so young. What's in your head? Why are you so dirty?" "You call this dirty?" Z was a little disapproving. Those bad guys in Xingqiu's sect have more tricks in this aspect. Song Qingshu was speechless, thinking that it was not without reason that Xingqiu's sect was called evil in the pugilistic world. "All right, you're not in Xingqiu's sect now. Don't use that method here." After saying that, he was worried that she would say something that would challenge her rationality again. Without waiting for her to refute, he hurriedly carried her out of the room and went next door. Hearing the sound of the door closing, Azu, who was sleeping soundly on the bed, opened her eyes. Her pretty face was already extremely red. "This wicked girl is really out of control. I have to find a chance to teach her a lesson." Although the conversation between Song Qingshu and Azu was soft, she was already a light sleeper because she had a lot on her mind. However, she was worried that she wouldn't be able to face him when she woke up, so she simply continued to pretend to be asleep. As a result, she heard every single one of her sister's bad ideas. It could be said that she was scared out of her wits. She was afraid that Song Qingshu would really be persuaded by her to take action. Fortunately, he was a gentleman in the end and didn't listen to Z's suggestion. Song Qingshu's sudden arrival dispelled her sleepiness. How could she sleep now, especially when she thought that he had carried her sister next door? This damned girl is really shameless. Originally, it was her nature to want to protect her younger sister, but Z's "Master, please come and pamper me" look made her unable to do so. When she thought about how she was still a young girl, but her younger sister had already tasted it and knew how to be obsessed with men, Azu felt her cheeks heat up. Just as she was tossing and turning in bed, she suddenly heard a faint sound of crying coming from next door. Azu was shocked. She wondered if Song Yunxian was bullying her sister. She hurriedly got up from the bed, put on her clothes, and rushed next door. Unfortunately, she stopped after a few steps. Even if Mr. Song is really bullying Z, why should I save her? Azu struggled in her heart. If I go there, I might not be able to save her and even get myself killed. But in the end, she still put on a straight face. She thought about how her younger sister was related to her by blood, and how she had grown up alone in a place like Xingqiu sect. Although she was nominally a maid in the Morong family, she had lived a luxurious life since she was young. Her younger sister had suffered so much, and now she had no relatives. If she didn't save her, who else would? So she mustered up her courage and walked next door. But courage was one thing. Instinctive fear was inevitable, causing her to walk slower and slower. Just then, she suddenly heard what her younger sister was crying about. She was indeed crying, but it was not a normal kind of crying. The kind of sound made her face turn red and her legs go weak. Although she was unmarried, she was not a fool. Naturally, she understood what was going on. She couldn't help but spit, thinking that she must have been crazy to think that her younger sister would be bullied. She wanted to leave immediately, but she didn't know why she didn't move her feet immediately. Instead, she blushed and pricked up her ears to listen to the sound. People's desire for gossip was engraved in their genes, not to mention that one of them was her own younger sister. But not long after, she couldn't stand it anymore. The sound that came from inside made a young lady like her wish that there was a hole in the ground to crawl into. She hurriedly went back to her room and closed the door. Only then did she calm down a little. Why does this stupid girl act like a prostitute? How shameless! Azu spat, but the sound she heard just now still continued to echo in her ears. After all, it was the most instinctive sound of a human being, the great harmony of life. How could it be so easy to forget? She quickly took off her clothes and went back to bed. She grabbed the blanket and covered her head. Although she couldn't actually hear it, her mind couldn't help but fill in some scenes that made her heart beat faster. She suddenly felt that something was wrong with her body. She reached out to touch her thigh. Her face was so red that it was about to drip blood. "I'm going to die." When the sun was high up in the sky, Song Qingshu left Zi's room feeling refreshed and returned to his own palace. Zhao Min had already finished washing up and was playing the zither in the palace. Seeing him return, she pursed her lips and smiled. Where did the busy man go last night? She woke up in the middle of the night and found that Song Qingshu wasn't by her side. In the end, he only returned now. As a woman, it was inevitable that she felt a little resentful. Seeing her face that was even more beautiful than usual, Song Qingshu couldn't help but feel a little guilty. "I couldn't sleep last night, so I planned to make arrangements for Shun Bijuan's matter. In the end, I ran into Xiao Yuanshan there. Xiao Yuanshan's martial arts are extremely high. He really is troublesome." Zhao Min shook her head. "If I were you, I would have let him die silently yesterday, completely ending everything." Song Qingshu smiled bitterly. When a man is alive, there are always things he can do and things he can't. After all, he is Big Brother Zhao's father. "All right, you're a man, and I'm a little girl. That's enough." Although Zhao Min said this, she actually agreed with his actions. An unscrupulous person might be able to obtain short-term benefits, but in the long run, the gains definitely didn't make up for the losses. "From the sound of your zither, just now, it seems that you're in a very good mood." Song Qingshu wisely didn't argue with her and changed the topic. "Of course." Zhao Min smiled. "It seems that the special training I gave you before was quite useful. You can actually distinguish the mood of the person playing the zither from the sound of the zither. A great teacher produces a great disciple." Song Qingshu gave him another not too big nor too small horse, thinking that anyone with a terminal illness would be in a good mood if they were cured overnight. Hearing his words, Zhao Min's face turned slightly red. She mumbled in a low voice, "Is there a great disciple who got his master into bed?" Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat, especially when he saw her occasionally reveal a hint of shyness. He couldn't help but want to go over and hug her. Who knew that Zhao Min would suddenly frown? "Don't touch me." Song Qingshu was confused. He didn't know how he had offended her. Zhao Min snorted in annoyance. "There's the smell of other women on you, and it's not just one woman." Song Qingshu, what the hell are all women born in the year of the dog? Not only can she smell a scent that doesn't belong to her, she can even distinguish how many women the other party has been in contact with. Chapter 1606. Song Qingshu said awkwardly, "Didn't I just tell you? Last night, I saw Shun Bijuan, Azu, and Zhao Min reached out and interrupted him. You don't have to explain anything to me. I'm not that petty. Anyway, they're not a threat to me." She was not lying. Z and Azu's birth was too low. Shin Bijuan was more troublesome. However, she was the crown princess of the Southern Song dynasty, and then Liao's Hui Fei. Even though she was still a virgin, she had already lost the qualifications to compete with her in the eyes of the world. Song Qingshu looked at her in surprise. Seeing her natural expression, he remembered that she was from the royal family and was used to men having many wives and concubines around them. She paid more attention to opponents of the same level. She would not be hostile to those who were destined to be concubines. On the contrary, she would try her best to win them over. Just like in the original work, although she and Zhou Zhuo were like fire and water, she had a harmonious relationship with Xiao Zhao and could coexist peacefully. Tell me everything that happened yesterday in detail. Let's discuss how to rescue Xiao Feng together. Zhao Min paused for a moment before revealing a faint smile. Of course, you don't have to tell us about your romantic affairs. Otherwise, it'll cause more trouble for us. Song Qingshu's old face heated up. He sat down next to her and began to discuss business. In the following period of time, Song Qingshu, Zhao Min, and Su Quan had been arranging matters in Shangjing. At the same time, they had the two women familiarize themselves with Liao's government affairs. Then Su Quan disguised herself as Yelu Hongji and sat in the palace. Zhao Min hid behind the scenes to help her deal with government affairs. Originally, it was most suitable for Zhao Min to pretend to be Yelu Hongji and Su Quan to continue to be Xiao Guanyin. However, Zhao Min took the initiative to step back. Firstly, she was a Mongolian princess and had the Ryong mansion behind her. Taking the initiative to step back would reduce the scruples of Song Qingshu's inner circle. Secondly, it was also a show of goodwill to Su Quan. After all, this Liao was her private land. Sure enough, Su Quan had a good impression of her. The two women, who were not familiar with each other at first, soon got along better than real sisters. As for Song Qingshu, he was a little worried about her relationship with Mongolia, but this was a happy ending for everyone. On the other side, Azi was constantly imitating Azu's usual words and actions. As for Azu, she was learning the etiquette of the harem from Su Quan, imitating Xiao Guanyin's words and actions. After about half a month, he felt that the preparations were more or less complete. The plan to rescue Xiao Feng was finally going to be implemented. The day before departure, Song Qingshu went to bid farewell to Yelu Nanxian. After all, he was going to leave Liao for a period of time. Thinking of her current situation, he couldn't help but worry. Thank you for sending people to help me find my father's remains. The two of them stood in a tall tower in the city. Looking at the bustling Shangjing city, Yelu Nanxian said softly, "This is what I should do. After all, he was your father. He could be considered as my elder." Song Qingshu also sighed. Yelu Nanxian's life was full of troubles. She was a princess, her father was an important official in the court. But now, her family was accused of treason. In order to protect her family, she had no choice but to marry into the Western Xia. "It's a pity that my father still has to bear the infamy," Yelu Nanxian said coldly. Song Qingshu looked apologetic. "I'm really sorry. I can only let you and your father suffer for the time being. After a period of time, I will definitely restore his reputation." "I hope so." Yelu Nanxian sighed softly and fell in his silence. "Nanxian, do you blame me?" Song Qingshu felt that this silence was a bit awkward and couldn't help but ask. Yelu Nanxian turned around and stared at him. A mocking smile appeared on her flawless face. "What's the point of saying this now?" Song Qingshu nodded. "That's right. I was too prejudiced." Yelu Nanxian also realized that her attitude just now was a bit too aggressive. She continued, "In fact, to a certain extent, I should be thanking you. It was you who avenged my father's death." Song Qingshu knew she was referring to him killing Murong Jingwei. That was just a coincidence. "No matter what, I owe you," Yelu Nanxian said. "So, I won't reveal your secret. I'm even willing to cooperate with your plan." Song Qingshu's heart was stirred. He couldn't help but say, "Nanxian, don't worry. The marriage alliance with the Western Xia is just a pretense. I will protect you personally. I won't let you marry anyone." "Why?" Yelu Nanxian tilted her head and looked at him. Her pretty face showed a hint of curiosity. "Because you are my woman. If you want to marry, you can only marry me," Song Qingshu said in a low voice. "You are surrounded by beauties in the imperial palace. You want to enjoy the pleasures of the world. But now you're telling me this. Don't you think it's a bit ridiculous?" Yelu Nanxian said lightly, "I know that you Han women value your chastity very much. You even want to marry a man who has touched your skin. But we, the people of the prairie, don't have that rule. Yangzhou, that night was just a beautiful misunderstanding. You don't need to take responsibility for me. I don't need you to take responsibility. Whoever I marry in the future is my own choice. You don't need to worry about it. Maybe when I find the Western Xia crown prince pleasing to the eye, I'll marry him. Song Qing coldly snorted. If that's the case, I'll kill him before that happens. There are so many men in this world. You can't kill every single one of them. Yalu Nancian chuckled. She didn't seem to care about his threat. She turned around and left the tower, leaving behind a tall and elegant silhouette. Watching that pair of perfectly round and well-proportioned legs that could mesmerize any man gradually disappear at the top of the stairs, thinking of her cold and resolute words, Song Qingshu couldn't help but feel a sense of loss. But after a while, Song Qingshu's eyes suddenly lit up. He remembered that Yalu Nancian had just used the word beautiful to describe that night. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but smile. Could it be that Sundara is the unique characteristic of all the princesses in this world? He raised his head to look for Yalu Nancian. Unfortunately, she was nowhere to be found. I'll untie the knot in her heart the next time I come back. Coming down from the tower, Song Qingshu didn't return to the imperial palace. Instead, he hurried to the southern courtyard's king's mansion. He had already arranged for Z to wait for Xiao Yuanshan for a few days. Of course, she appeared as Azu. Counting the days, Xiao Yuanshan's injuries should be more or less healed. Presumably, he wouldn't be able to hold himself back and would return to Shangjing City in the next few days. Quietly sneaking into the southern courtyard's king's mansion, Song Qingshu had a faint smile on his face. He had already sensed Xiao Yuanshan's presence in the mansion. He really came. The most important question now was whether or not Z could successfully fool Xiao Yuanshan's eyes by pretending to be Azu. Chapter 16:07. When Song Qingshu neared the study, he discovered that Xiao Yuanshan was already chatting with Z. He purposely stopped outside the door for a while and discovered that Xiao Yuanshan was mainly asking if Z had encountered any danger during this period of time and what happened in Shangjing City recently. Z, on the other hand, dealt with them calmly. Every frown and smile was exactly the same as Azu. Song Qingshu was secretly amazed. Z, this girl is really a natural actress. If I didn't know beforehand, I most likely wouldn't be able to tell right now. Not to mention the careless Xiao Yuanshan. That sister of yours really left. At this moment, Xiao Yuanshan suddenly opened his mouth to ask. A strange look flashed across Z's eyes, but she still nodded. That's right. She went to look for the ice silkworm. She left the second day after Uncle left. What, looking for the ice silkworm? That's just an excuse. Xiao Yuanshan snorted coldly. She just saw that Feng was in trouble, and now that you two are in trouble, she's afraid of implicating her. What sister, Tui, afraid of death? Xiao Yuanshan didn't have any misgivings. He became more and more excited, scolding Z, but he didn't expect the main character to be standing right in front of him. Z's eyebrows twitched as she listened. Although she still maintained a smile on her face, anyone could see that her smile was stiff, as if it could explode at any moment. Song Qingshu was worried that she wouldn't be able to control herself. Then all his previous efforts would be wasted. So he hurriedly walked in and interrupted Xiao Yuanshan's crazy scolding. Senior Xiao. Only then did Xiao Yuanshan see him, his expression softening a little. So it's Qingshu. Do you see, blood sisters aren't as reliable as sworn brothers? Song Qingshu. Ozzy, is Senior Zhao's injury healed? Song Qingshu wondered why this fellow wouldn't let go of Ozzy, and had no choice but to change the topic again. Xiao Yuanshan patted his chest. This injury is nothing. Although it hasn't fully healed, it's more or less healed. I wanted to save Feng. How could I stay in the mountains? Song Qingshu nodded. Senior Xiao came at the right time. We were planning to take action tonight. So fast. Xiao Yuanshan said with a frown. Ever since the prisoners were robbed a few times, the current imperial prison is no longer the same as it was in the past. Not only is it heavily guarded, there are experts as numerous as the clouds. Will we be able to rescue Feng? Or like this? Song Qingshu already had a plan for this. He explained calmly, I've already found out that tonight is the night when they change guards. When the time comes, the two groups of people will inevitably reveal some flaws. It won't be difficult for us to sneak in. As for the soldiers and experts in the prison, of course, we can't fight them head-on. As he spoke, he took out a small vermilion porcelain bottle. Western Xia's first-class Hall's grieving, softening wind. Xiao Yuanshan could be considered to be very knowledgeable. He immediately recognized the item in Xiao Yuanshan's hand. Song Qingshu nodded. That's right. With this, we won't have to fight with those guards, and we'll be able to rescue Big Brother Xiao quickly. That's great, haha. This was the first good news that Xiao Yuanshan had heard in this period of time. However, Song Qingshu immediately changed the topic. Actually, it's not difficult to rescue Big Brother Xiao. The problem is where we should go after we rescue him. Yalu Hongji should be able to react very quickly. If he keeps sending soldiers or experts to chase after us, it will also be troublesome. It's best for us to first find a place that can withstand the pressure from Liao and lie low for a while. Xiao Yuanshan nodded in agreement. Jin and Qing are the first to be eliminated. They have a feud with Liao. Although we have a falling out with Liao's emperor, how can we do something like surrender to an enemy country? As for Western Xia, we can't do it either. Firstly, the clue of grieving softening wind will soon lead Liao in that direction. Secondly, I heard that Western Xia and Liao are planning to unite by marriage. At that time, Western Xia might be pressured into handing us over. Originally, Song is a good place to go. Unfortunately, the Song people betrayed us and joined forces with Jin to attack Liao. It almost caused our country to be destroyed. It's fine if we don't go. Looks like Mongolia is more suitable. At this time, Z blinked her eyes and said in a timely manner, now that Mongolia and Liao are allies, what if Yalu Hongji send a note to Genghis Khan and the Mongolians send you back? This, Xiao Yuanshan hesitated. This kind of situation was very likely to happen. Now that things had come to this, he was shocked to find that there was no place for him and his son in this big world. Z smiled and said, Uncle, did you forget that there is actually another place to go? Xiao Yuanshan couldn't help but slap his forehead. Look at my memory. I actually forgot about Qingshu's Golden Snake Camp. That's right. With the Golden Snake Camp's current strength, there is indeed no need to fear Liao. Elder Xiao, Big Brother Zhao's name, is known throughout the world. If I can get your help, I will definitely welcome you with open arms. But I'm afraid that you won't think much of my place. Song Qingshu had a difficult expression. Qingshu, you worry too much. You have saved our lives many times. Not to mention that you have 1,000 miles of fertile land and 100,000 strong army. Even if you were really just a mountain king of the green forest, we would definitely come to repay you. Xiao Yuanshan laughed loudly. It's just that I'm old now and only have interest in martial arts. I don't want to deal with these mundane matters. So when the time comes, I will let Feng help you. I will return to Shaolin and learn a few more techniques to piss off those old bald donkeys. Song Qingshu was overjoyed. He was worried that after saving Xiao Feng would wholeheartedly go into seclusion. Wouldn't he have saved him for nothing? So he purposely dug a trap to lure Xiao Yuanshan into it. When the time came, he would go and persuade Xiao Feng. As for Xiao Yuanshan himself, Song Qingshu didn't really care that much about him. If Xiao Yuanshan left, it would save him trouble. More importantly, he could also go and annoy those Shaolin guys. It was killing two birds with one stone. After that, the few of them discussed the details of the operation and quietly waited for the sky to turn dark. After nightfall, Song Qingshu and Xiao Yuanshan took advantage of the change of guards to sneak into the prison. As for Zi, because her martial arts were too weak, she would only be a burden if she followed them. So, he had her leave the city early and prepare a few horses to wait for them in a residential area in the outskirts. In any case, whether it was Song Qingshu or Xiao Feng with their martial arts, a mere city wall wouldn't be able to stop them. Xiao Feng was currently meditating in the prison. Previously, the poison in Yalu Hongji's wine was too strong. Even with his martial arts, he had to meditate every day to force the poison out. Only today did he manage to force the poison out. In retrospect, he couldn't help but sigh. Yalu Hongji really didn't plan to kill him. Otherwise, why would he allow him to leisurely force the poison out? If someone casually sealed his acupuncture points or pierced his shoulder blades, he most likely wouldn't be able to force the poison out by himself for the rest of his life. Just as he was sighing with emotion, his heart suddenly stirred, because he continuously heard bursts of pu-pu sounds. With his experience, how could he not know that it was the sound of people falling to the ground? Someone broke into the prison. Xiao Feng was about to get up when he suddenly felt dizzy. He hurriedly held his breath and concentrated on forcing the poison out. His expression was incomparably solemn. Sorrowful wind softening. Thank you to yesterday's king of pigeons, Zhang Mao of Hongcheng, Moonflow Hen. Please call me Li Erniu, P2 Luo, Book Friends 542758834, 529297149. Invincible existence, smiling towards the sun and Fancy Gang for their gifts and support. Chapter 1608. Xiao Feng's first thought was that the people from Western Xia's Class 1 Hall had come to break him out of prison. He wondered whether they were here to save him or to kill him. Before he could come to a conclusion, he saw Song Qingshu rush in. Second brother, it's you? Xiao Feng was surprised and delighted. Because he had sworn brotherhood with Duan Yu before, he had also counted Duan Yu in when he swore brotherhood with Song Qingshu. Duan Yu was the youngest, so he was ranked third, and Song Qingshu was ranked second. Big brother Xiao, I'm here to save you. Song Qingshu felt a little gloomy when he heard Duan Yu address him as second brother. Firstly, it felt weird for a man to be called second brother. Secondly, he didn't like Duan Yu's temperament of a good-for-nothing young master. However, although Duan Yu was a useless worm to the clan like Jia Baoyu, he was gentle and had a good character. So, Song Qingshu reluctantly accepted him as a sworn brother. Song Qingshu shook his hand and broke the prison's chains. He came to Xiao Feng's side and noticed that Xiao Feng's hands and feet were shackled. He swung his hand, and sword qi shot out in all directions, breaking the shackles. Second brother's sword qi is truly invincible. Even the sturdy chains can't block its sharpness. Xiao Feng regained his freedom and moved his arms and legs as he praised. He was a top-class elite in the world, so there was no way he could not tell how great this sword qi was. Big brother, you making fun of me. Song Qingshu took out the antidote for the sorrowful wind softener and let him smell it. Uncle is guarding outside. Let's go. Even though Xiao Feng was not deeply poisoned, he could not hold his breath forever. When he smelled the antidote for the sorrowful wind softener, he was instantly energized. All right. Without any hesitation, he rushed out with Xiao Feng. This was the greatest difference between him and Guijing. Guijing was a little inflexible in certain aspects, but Xiao Feng was much more decisive. He did not think about whether he should betray Liao or not. He would think about it after he got out. Xiao Yuanshan guarded the door in case the reinforcements who heard the news rushed over and trapped them inside. When he saw Song Qingshu come out with his son, he was overjoyed. You're out so soon? Let's go. The few of them didn't even bother to exchange pleasantries. Taking advantage of the fact that the guard were still stunned by the sorrowful softening wind and the soldiers outside the perimeter hadn't reacted yet, the three of them quickly used their lightness skills and left. The whole process could be said to be like the wind, leaving everyone speechless. The three of them ran all the way out. At this time, it was already nightfall, and the city gate had long been closed. However, this was not a problem for the three of them. They did not intend to leave through the city gate anyway. They directly chose a remote part of the city wall and directly climbed over it. After jumping over the city wall, the few of them sped through the wilderness. At this moment, it was as if they were fish leaping through the vast sea and birds soaring through the sky. Xiao Feng no longer had any misgivings and laughed out loud. Second brother Qin Gong is truly unparalleled. Just now, I had to step on the city wall to borrow strength, and father had to use the long whip. Second brother, you were able to easily leap over the city wall. After all, Shangjing City was the capital of Liao. The city wall was tall and thick, to the extent that even top-notch experts like Xiao Feng and Xiao Yuanshan couldn't leap over it in one go. They had to borrow strength midway to continue. However, Song Qingshu had easily climbed up the city wall. No wonder he was so surprised. Xiao Yuanshan was also filled with emotion at the side. I have practiced martial arts for my whole life. Only when I met Qingshu did I feel that I have lived all these years like a dog. Song Qingshu smiled and replied, in terms of palm techniques, I'm not as strong as Brother Xiao. In terms of whip techniques, I'm also not as good as Senior Xiao. The two of you are really too humble. A young man who is neither arrogant nor rash, and has such a temperament, is even rarer. The more Xiao Yuanshan looked at him, the more satisfied he was. If he had a daughter, he would most likely marry her to him. This time, Song Qingshu intentionally slowed down his pace and advanced side by side with the father and son. Fortunately, the two of them were originally experts in the world, and their speed was also extremely fast. Very soon, the three of them arrived at the agreed place to meet up with Azi. Azu, seeing the girl in the pink dress in the wooden house, Xiao Feng couldn't help but have mixed feelings. Xiao, Brother Xiao. At first, Azi was still a little shaky, but she quickly got into the role of Azu. Seeing that Xiao Feng also didn't recognize Azi, Song Qingshu couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. At the same time, he was secretly glad that Xiao Feng was a true gentleman. Normally, he treated Azu with courtesy and didn't have any intimate contact. Otherwise, his mood right now would really be a little strange. There's no time to lose. Let's hurry up. Xiao Yuanshan walked over with a few fine horses that he had prepared. Where are we going now? Xiao Feng was startled. To the Golden Snake Camp. Xiao Yuanshan told him about his previous considerations. Who knew that Xiao Feng would hesitate? Before, I refused to lead the troops to attack the Golden Snake Camp and was feared by His Majesty. If I go to the Golden Snake Camp now, wouldn't it be a crime? Xiao Yuanshan said with dissatisfaction. Yelu Hongji treats you like this. Why do you still care about him? Song Qingshu said with a smile. Brother Xiao, you may not know, but before you were imprisoned by Yelu Hongji mainly because of Yelu Isen's interference. He roughly explained Yelu Isen's plot to rebel and cut off Yelu Hongji's wings one by one. Yelu Isen's plot was clearly exposed, but the emperor didn't have the slightest intention of letting you go. He even sent more troops to guard you. Xiao Yuanshan said hatefully when he mentioned this. As the saying goes, the heart of a Taoist is hard to predict. He knows that after this incident, there's already a rift in your heart, so he doesn't dare to use you anymore. It's only because of your prestige that he doesn't dare to make a move against you for now. After a period of time, when he stabilizes the situation, I'm afraid it will be your death. Xiao Feng was silent. Clearly, with his understanding of Yelu Hongji, he agreed with his father's judgment. However, the two of them were sworn brothers in the past, so he couldn't say anything. He took the initiative to change the topic. What's going on with Yelu Isen's rebellion? When he was locked up in prison, he had faintly heard the jailers discuss this matter. However, the information he received was fragmented, so he didn't understand everything. Xiao Yuanshan then roughly explained what had happened in Jing after he was imprisoned. Xiao Feng listened with amazement. The emperor is really unfathomable to be able to make a comeback in this kind of situation. Everyone is guessing what kind of trump card the emperor has. Some say that the emperor is actually a super expert. Some say that there's an old eunuch hidden in the imperial palace. And some say that it was the elder of the Secret Intelligence Bureau. There are many different opinions, but no one can come to a conclusion. Xiao Yuanshan's tone was also full of doubt. Although the emperor has martial arts, he can't be considered a super expert. Xiao Feng had fought with him before they became sworn brothers, so he naturally knew his background. The Secret Intelligence Bureau has always been mysterious. It's most likely them who did it. At the side, Song Qingshu listened to the two's discussion. At the same time, he was secretly vigilant. He had to remind Zhao Min and Su Quan to make some arrangements in this area to avoid being suspected by smart people. After chatting for a while, Azi timely opened her mouth. Brother Xiao, now that the world is in chaos, We can't go grazing horses and sheep outside the Great Wall, even if we want to. It just so happens that we have nowhere to go. Not to mention that Qing Shu has saved our lives many times. It's reasonable for us to go to the Golden Snake Camp to help repay him. Song Qing Shu hurriedly waved his hand. I saved you out of brotherly and friendship, not for any repayment. Xiao Feng laughed loudly. Second brother worries too much. We've come to help you out of brotherly and friendship, not to mention that I need the protection of the Golden Snake Camp. Chapter 1609. Not long after, the city gate of Shangjing was opened, and some pursuers came out. Hearing the commotion, they finally reached an agreement and rode east to the Golden Snake Camp. Along the way, Song Qingshu was most worried that Aziz's identity would be exposed. Fortunately, the little demon girl's acting skills were excellent, and she fooled the two old Jianghu men without the slightest suspicion. Of course, this was also the reason why the father and son were not on guard. Otherwise, no matter how good Aziz's acting was, there would always be some flaws. After rushing east and entering the territory of the Golden Snake Camp, Xiao Yuanshan said goodbye and left. After all, he was old and did not want to be burdened by the secular world. He only wanted to study martial arts. Xiao Feng could not stop him, but when he heard that he was going back to Shaolin, he was shocked. Don't worry, with my martial arts, I won't be discovered, Xiao Yuanshan said conceitedly. Xiao Feng frowned, but that sweeping monk, Xiao Yuanshan's eyes also flashed a trace of fear. This time I will stay far away from the Sutra's depository. In such a big Shaolin is not only the depository that secretly learns martial arts. Xiao Feng understood that his father was wrongly accused by the people of the Central Plains of stealing martial arts from Shaolin. As a result, he was ambushed by masters from various sects at Yinmen Pass, causing his mother's death. These years, his father has continuously killed those who participated in the battle at Yinmen Pass, and at the same time secretly learned Shaolin martial arts as revenge. Didn't you accuse me of stealing martial arts? Then I will steal it for you to see. Because it involved his mother, Xiao Feng could not persuade him, so he could only let Xiao Yuanshan do as he pleased. After bidding farewell to Xiao Yuanshan, they finally returned to Taiyan 2 days later. Originally, Jinan, Yangzhou, and even Jining were larger than Tai, and within the sphere of influence of the Golden Snake Camp. However, to the north of Jinan was the Yellow River, and further to the north was the Hebei Plain, which could be described as a vast expanse of flat land with no strongholds to defend. Although Yangzhou was prosperous, it was too close to the Southern Song dynasty. Once the Southern Song dynasty sent troops, Yangzhou would be the first to bear the brunt. Jining had the advantage of the Sisui River, so it could easily and quickly transport resources from the Yellow River and Huai River. However, to its west was the Central Plains, which was similarly undefended. Although the Jin Kingdom and the Qing Kingdom were under the secret control of Song Qingshu, this relationship could not be made public, so they could only set up their camp in Taiyan. To the north of Tai and was the Tai Mountain. During the spring and autumn, Liu relied on this line of defense to resist the powerful kingdom for hundreds of years, so there was no doubt about the safety. This allowed the people of Golden Snake Camp to feel at ease. At the same time, it also dispelled the thoughts of some ambitious people from the Jin Kingdom and the Qing Kingdom to launch a surprise attack on Golden Snake Camp. After all, if the probability of success was extremely high, even the emperor could not stop the opinions of all the civil and military officials in the court. Golden Snake Camp had long since received intelligence that Jiu led the leaders of the 12 palaces and the newly promoted corps members of Golden Snake Camp out to welcome them. In fact, after the encirclement and suppression by the Qing Kingdom, several of the leaders of the 12 palaces of Golden Snake Camp had betrayed them. In addition, during this period of time, Song Qingshu and Jiu had promoted their own trusted aides. The so-called 12 palaces of Golden Snake Camp had long since ceased to exist in name. Of course, these leaders still held venerated positions. However, with the exception of Shui Jian, Situ Boulay, and a few others who had close relationships with Song Qingshu and Jiu, The others had long since become nominal. However, they had no complaints. At present, Song Qing-shu was like the sun in the sky, leading the Golden Snake Camp to become famous throughout the world. These people had already enjoyed far more than when they were mountain kings. At that time, they did not follow Chu Honglu and the others in betrayal, indicating that they did not have much ambition. Song Qing-shu did not burn the bridge after crossing the river and instead treated them well, which was enough to satisfy them. Paying respects to the Prince of Qi. With Ajio taking the lead and kneeling, the group of people successively paid their respects to Song Qing-shu. This was also Ajio's intention. He wanted to gradually break away from the Jianghu atmosphere of Golden Snake Camp. After all, the Prince of Qi was officially conferred the title of prince by the Han Emperor. In the hearts of the people of the world, his rallying power was far greater than the title of Golden Snake King. Previously, after Song Qing-shu had publicly announced his departure for the Southern Song dynasty, Ajio no longer used his identity to appear. After all, he did not wish for two Song Qing-shu to appear at the same time, which would easily cause the people of the world to be indescribably astonished. However, this did not affect Ajio's daily work. This was because after these days of management, Golden Snake Camp had long since become a solid block of iron. In addition, Song Qing-shu's fame was growing. Just by relying on her identity as the matriarch, she was able to intimidate the masses. There was no need for her to pretend to be Song Qing-shu. "Brothers, please rise." Song Qing-shu hastily went forward to greet them. Now that his great undertaking had not been accomplished, he could not put on the airs of an emperor. With a wave of his hand, those who were kneeling immediately felt a gentle lifting force. They could not help but stand up involuntarily. They could not help but be incomparably shocked. They thought that this skill was truly shocking. However, after being shocked, they also felt gratified. After all, the stronger the leader, the better it would be for them to follow. After greeting everyone in turn, Song Qing-shu pulled Xiao Feng over and introduced him. "This is my sworn brother, Xiao Feng. From now on, he will be staying in Golden Snake Camp for a period of time. Everyone should get to know each other. So, it's King Xiao of the Southern Courtyard, the famous North Xiao Feng, Chief Xiao of the Beggar Sect." Many of the people present were martial artists. It could be said that they had long heard of his name. One after another, they came forward to greet him. Before Song Qing-shu appeared, Xiao Feng of the younger generation should be one of the most famous figures in the world. Taking advantage of this moment, Song Qing-shu pulled Ajio aside. "Ajio, it has been hard on you during this period." Ajio pursed his lips and smiled. "How is it hard for me to stay in the residence every day? On the contrary, it is not only hard for you to travel around the world, but also dangerous for you to travel between different forces." Hearing such understanding words from her, Song Qing-shu could not help but feel greatly moved. If it was not for the fact that they were in public, he might not be able to resist holding her in his arms and taking good care of her. After chatting for a while, Song Qing-shu learned that Xia Qingqing, Zheng Ro, and Zhao Weiner had all gone out on official business. Now that the sphere of influence was expanding, many places needed the most core people to guard. "If Sister Zheng Ro knew that you were coming back, I am afraid that no matter what you said, she would not leave Taiyan." Ajio suddenly sighed. "I have let her down." Song Qing-shu was silent. Back then, he had married Zheng Ro mainly to gain the support of Situ Bolei's faction. After they got married, the two could be said to be separated more often than not. They only saw each other a few times a year. He was really not a good husband. In the original work, her presence was already very low. Unexpectedly, in this world, she was still like this, but she has never regretted it, Gio said quietly. "She once told me that when she saw you by the window that night, she knew that you were the man destined for her. Now, she only needs to hear news about you to be happy for half a day, so you don't have to blame yourself too much." The more she asked for nothing, the more I blame myself. Song Qing-shu was filled with emotion. "Can you handle the self-blame?" Ajio revealed a faint smile and pointed to a tall girl not far away. "In the future, I am afraid that you will also be full of self-blame towards her. Many people complained to the monk, asking him to accept Azu because they felt that Azu had been touched by the main character, so she was the main character's woman. If she were to be given to Xiao Feng, they would feel that she was a cuckold or something. I was also quite depressed. Song Qing-shu had never liked Azu, and Azu also didn't like Song Qing-shu. Just because Song saw her naked body, without any real relationship, she became Song's woman. I can understand that some readers want to accept the whole plot, but the character of Azu in the original work wasn't even considered the female lead, and she didn't have a beauty that could cause the downfall of the city. In this book, her identity was also not worth mentioning. No family power, no sect, etc. It was easy to accept her. But what about after that? Just like Zheng Ro and the other women, what was the difference between being on the shelf and being in the cold palace? Since that was the case, it was better to fulfill her and Xiao Feng in the original work, a pair of sad lovers. Many people complained that with Huang Rong as an example, Azu was pretending to be unable to do it. I also explained that Huang Rong and Azu were significantly different. She was prettier than Azu, and she was the famous female lead in the original work. Most importantly, most of the readers had Huang Rong's plot, so their plots were completely different. In fact, the monk somewhat regretted writing Huang Rong's plot. He should have written the ambiguous relationship between the two, just like the male lead in Madame Xiao in The Best Servant. Unfortunately, the monk didn't control himself when he wrote it. After all, the monk was once a reader and also had a strong Huang Rong plot. In addition, the monk previously said that he didn't plan to accept Azu, but there was a small possibility that the plot developed beyond my control. For example, I wrote that Azu pretended to be Azi to deceive Song Qing-shu. This plot was suddenly thought of when I was writing it. In the original work, Azu loved to disguise herself as Xiao Feng, Miracle Dr. Shui by Shi Jing, and Duan Zhengchun to deceive people. In the end, she ended up in the plot herself. When I wrote that she pretended to be Azi to trick the main character, I thought it fit her character. It was also something she could do. However, the main character took advantage of her again, which was beyond my initial expectations. Actually, I shouldn't have arranged for the plot where Song Qing-shu saw Azu naked. At that time, I thought that Song Qing-shu wanted to ensure that she wouldn't betray him. This was the last insurance that he used to threaten her and Xiao Feng's happiness. However, I didn't expect that the readers would think that it wasn't appropriate to make Xiao Feng a cuckold. On the other hand, those who supported accepting the plot thought that since she had a relationship with the main character, she shouldn't give her to Xiao Feng. It would make the main character cuckold. Chapter 16:10. Song Qing-shu looked in the direction of the voice and saw a tall girl looking at him with a blushing face. It was Yelu Qi's sister, Yelu Yin. Of all the girls he knew, Yelu Yin was probably the tallest. In addition, her figure was extremely slender. In his previous life, she would definitely be a world-famous model. But although she was tall, perhaps because of her age, her face had a trace of childishness. The two completely different combinations made Song Qing-shu a little distressed. If others could be described as having a childish complexion and large breasts, then what could Yelu Yin be described as having a childish complexion and tall, slender? After thinking for a long time, he still couldn't think of a suitable adjective. At this time, Jiu, who was beside him, had already pulled him over to her. When she heard that you were coming back, Miss Yelu also pestered you to come along. Sister Jiu, hearing her teasing, Yelu Yin was so embarrassed that she quickly hid behind her brother. But she still secretly looked at Song Qing-shu from time to time. She already knew about the marriage alliance, and that the person in front of her was her husband. How could she not be curious? Uncle, brother Yelu. Song Qing-shu smiled at Yelu Yin, then cupped his hands in greeting to Yelu Chukai and Yelu Qi. Yelu Chukai and Yelu Qi hurriedly cupped their hands in greeting. Greetings, master. Song Qing-shu smiled slightly. We're all family. No need to be so formal. Yelu Chukai also smiled. Etiquette cannot be ignored. After the marriage, we will not be courteous with you. Yin come and meet your brother Song. Yin shyly stood up from behind her brother. Although she was still shy because of her young age, growing up on the grasslands gave her the courage to look at her lover. Song Qingshu smiled at her. "Hello, Sister Yin." Yin replied in a small voice. "Hello, Brother Song." Song Qingshu sighed inwardly. He was not like the protagonists in the novels he had read in his previous life who rejected marriage alliances. As long as it was beneficial to his cause, and he did not hate it, he could completely accept a new marriage. In fact, this was the mainstream view of this world. For example, Ah Jiao and Zhao Min, who were born in the royal family, were quite supportive of this. Zhou Zhiruo and Dongfang Muxue, who were born in the pugilistic world but had a lot of ambition, also turned a blind eye to it. Even if the others were unwilling, they could not express their opposition under such circumstances. In fact, a marriage alliance did not necessarily mean a simple exchange of benefits. For example, with Ah Jiao and Ren Yingying, both could be said to be in love with each other. A marriage alliance was the icing on the cake, but it had to be said that the probability of this happening was too small. In most cases, one would marry someone who had no feelings for each other. Whether it was Zheng Ro or Yin, although they were not outstanding beauties, they were still good-looking beauties. From a man's point of view, they were still very attractive. But Song Qingshu had to admit that he did not love them, so it was destined that they would not be happy in the future. However, it was necessary to marry them. Previously, he needed the support of Situ Lading's faction, and now he needed the Yelu family's loyalty. Since Yelu, Chukai, and his father came, the Golden Snake Camp, which had a strong atmosphere of the pugilistic world, had taken on a new look, becoming more and more like a well-organized country, rather than an organization of the pugilistic world. This kind of talent was similar to Zhuge Liang and Sun Yu. Not to mention that his daughter was a top-notch beauty. Even if his daughter was a woman without beauty, he would still marry her without hesitation. Although he felt somewhat sorry for Zheng Ro and Yin, he could only wrong them. All he could do was to take up the responsibility of a husband, and after the matter was over, he would burn the bridge and give their families the corresponding glory. At this time, Xiaofeng also finished greeting the others and walked over. Both sides came from Liao, and now that they met again, they were especially emotional, and they almost held hands and looked at each other with tears in their eyes. When the group returned to the city, Ajio had already arranged a grand banquet. On one hand, it was to welcome Song Qingshu, and on the other hand, it was to welcome Xiaofeng. During the banquet, the officials all toasted to Song Qingshu and Xiaofeng. Because Xiaofeng had been in prison for some time, and because of what happened to Liao, he was depressed, so he simply drank to drown his sorrows. As for Song Qingshu, because he had been running around all year round, he also needed to get close to these confidants in the headquarters. Therefore, both of them did not refuse anyone, and unknowingly drank dozens of jars. Xiaofeng originally had a large capacity, and Song Qingshu had been influenced by the high concentration of strong alcohol in his later life. Coupled with his vigorous internal energy, even a little bit of drunkenness would be dissolved by his internal energy, so the two of them drank more and more excitedly. Later, Xiaofeng pulled Yaluqi to talk about all kinds of things about Liao. Yalu Chukai then moved to Song Qingshu's side, and after chatting for a while, intentionally or unintentionally mentioned his daughter's marriage. "Qingshu, how long do you plan to stay this time? Why don't you arrange the marriage with Yen first?" After their family moved to the Golden Snake Camp, their status was a little awkward. Although the Han people and the Khitans were not as hostile as with the female Jinren, they were not very friendly either. They always felt like guests. Only when this marriage was completely settled could they properly integrate into the whole group. This time, Song Qingshu actually did not stay for long. Next, he had to go to the Jin Kingdom to deal with the Southern Song Dynasty's northern expedition. It could be said that there were a lot of headaches. Of course, if he told the truth, maybe Yelu Chukai would think that he was evading, and then they would be disappointed. "This time, I came back to marry your daughter," said Song Qingshu half-truthfully. At the same time, he took out a huge luminous pearl. "This son-in-law will use this pearl as a betrothal gift. I hope that uncle will marry the pearl in your palm to me." The surrounding people sucked in a breath of cold air. Such a fist-sized luminous pearl was really priceless. If it fell into the Jianghu, who knew how many sects would be destroyed, how many families would be ruined, and how many people would die? And to put it bluntly, just this luminous pearl alone could be exchanged for many young girls. Now that he was only asking for a girl's hand in marriage, his sincerity was almost overflowing. But Song Qingshu himself did not care. This luminous pearl was the biggest one he found in the imperial treasury of Liao. In any case, he was offering Buddha with borrowed flowers, so he did not feel bad about it. Moreover, the other party's value was not just priceless. In a sense, this luminous pearl was not for Yelu Yin, nor was it for Yelu Qi. It was mainly for Yelu Chukai, the emperor's assistant. In his heart, one Yelu Chukai was more precious than 1,000 or 10,000 of these pearls. Seeing him take out such a precious betrothal gift, and more importantly, publicly announce this matter, Yelu Chukai couldn't help but be surprised and happy. With such a good son-in-law, what more can I ask for? If the previous engagement was only a private agreement, now that it was completely set, in a sense it could be said to be announced to the world. There was no possibility of reneging. How could Yelu Chukai, who had always been worried about his family, not be overjoyed? There's no time like the present. Why don't we get married today? On the side, a Jew suddenly said with a smile. Chapter 16:11. Although Yelu Chukai wanted to settle his daughter's marriage as soon as possible, he didn't want to get married too hastily. After all, if the wedding was too simple and rushed, his daughter would be looked down upon. Aju seemed to know what he was thinking and said with a smile, "Don't worry, old master. I have already prepared these in advance. Just now, I have already sent someone to help little sister Yin dress up and put on the wedding dress." After saying that, he clapped his hands, and maids came in with red lanterns and red silk. The whole process was very orderly, and it was obvious that they had practiced it many times. She had no choice but to arrange this in such a hurry. Although the Southern Song dynasty hadn't officially started the northern expedition, they had already sent out troops on a small scale. The Jin kingdom still needed Song Qingshu to go back and organize the overall situation. The longer he was late, the more dangerous it would be. Therefore, when she knew the day Song Qingshu would come back, she prepared everything in advance. Otherwise, if they waited for the normal wedding process, they would have to choose an auspicious date and a lot of complicated procedures. By then, it would be too late. Hearing that his daughter had already gone to put on the wedding dress, Yelu Chukai didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This girl. At this time, the people in the hall also started to make a ruckus, urging them to have the wedding tonight. Yelu Chukai also drank a lot of wine. At this time, he was tipsy. Coupled with the sincerity that Song Qingshu had just shown and the warm atmosphere around him, he waved his hand. "Then let's get married today." Xiao Feng couldn't help but laugh. "Second brother, big brother has to congratulate you." Although he didn't really agree with the other party's behavior of flirting everywhere, he also understood that the other party's identity was different and couldn't be judged by ordinary people's view of love. Song Qingshu returned a toast to him. "I wonder when I can drink big brother's wedding wine." Xiao Feng looked at Azi beside him and said with a smile, "In 2 years, when we are herding horses and sheep outside the Great Wall, we will definitely invite second brother to drink at our wedding wine." "Good." Song Qingshu clinked glasses with him and thought in his heart, "After everything is done, I will keep my promise and let Azu go, and help this pair of ill-fated lovebirds." Very quickly, Ajio's subordinates set up the wedding hall, and a crowd of people began to watch Song Qingshu and Yelu Yin bow to the heavens and earth. Yelu Chukai, who was invited to the seat of honor, smiled and stroked his beard. Although this wedding was a little rushed and sudden, it could be seen that the 9th princess had carefully prepared it. It was not simple or sloppy, and her daughter did not suffer any grievances. What made him even happier was the 9th princess' attitude. She was so attentive to Yin and in the future, Yin would definitely get along well with her. He had long heard that Song Qing-shu had many women around him, but as a member of the royal family, he did not mind. He was mainly concerned about how his daughter got along with those women. The ninth princess was the first wife. Although there seemed to be another official wife in Yangzhou, in terms of status, power, and reputation, the ninth princess would definitely take the position of empress in the future. In the customs of the people of the grasslands, the emperor could usually have several empresses at the same time. This was the biggest difference between them and the dynasties of the Han. With the ninth princess looking after him, Yener would definitely not be bullied in the future. The only thing that made Yelu Chukai a little regretful was that Song Qingshu's parents were not present. But he had heard rumors that in the past, Song Qingshu and the Wu-Tang clan had a grudge, so he guessed that it was not convenient for Song Yuanxiao to appear. So after a little regretful, he expressed his understanding. After the ceremony of bowing to the heavens and earth, the bride was helped back to the bridal chamber by the maidservants, and Song Qingshu was pulled back to the banquet. After the interlude of the wedding, the atmosphere once again reached a new climax. Before, everyone took turns to toast him and Xiao Feng, but this time, no one toasted Xiao Feng, and everyone toasted him. Song Qingshu also relied on his strong internal energy and could be said to not refuse any of the toasts, causing everyone to cheer. Sometimes people were strange like this. Before, they were still unfamiliar with each other, but after drinking once, their relationship naturally became harmonious. It was unknown how much time had passed, but in the end, it was Ajio who felt sorry for him and stood out to block the wine for him, saying, "Don't try to persuade him anymore. Today, he is already drunk enough. If he drinks any more, he won't be able to enter the bridal chamber." Her words caused everyone to roar with laughter, but no one was stupid enough to try to persuade him again. First, he had drunk too much, and they were afraid that if he drank any more, there would be problems with his body. Second, Ajio's prestige was here, and since she had spoken, these people did not want to be unlucky. Help the Prince of Qi into the bridal chamber. The rest of you continue to drink. Ajio called over a few maidservants, and together, they supported Song Qingshu into the inner residence. With the two big bosses gone, the atmosphere actually relaxed, and the group of heroes continued to drink with each other. After leaving the main hall, Ajio simply went over to personally support Song Qingshu. Smelling his body reeking of alcohol, she could not help but roll her eyes at him, saying, "You are really something, drinking everyone who comes to toast you. Are you not afraid of harming your body?" Song Qingshu's face was somewhat red, and he laughed mischievously, saying, "Today is a happy day. If I drink some people's wine and refuse others' wine, wouldn't I chill the hearts of a group of people?" Ajio said unhappily, "It is clearly because you are not drunk after 1,000 cups that you do not refuse anyone. Look at the other leaders. Every time they drink, it is enough. Don't worry, with my cultivation, this wine can't get me drunk." Hearing her complaints, Song Qingshu's heart warmed. Suddenly, he felt as if he was being cared for by his wife. This was the warmth of a family that other women could not give him. "I know you're amazing, okay? If you're so amazing, then don't make me support you as you walk." Ajio pinched him, but did not bear to use force. "Here, the bridal chamber is here. Go in by yourself." Unexpectedly, Song Qingshu, with a face full of saliva, pulled her back, saying, "Why don't we go in together?" Ajio's face instantly turned red, and he guiltily glanced at the maid beside him, saying, "What nonsense are you talking about? This is the bridal chamber for you and little sister Yen. You know what I'm talking about. We can go together." Song Qingshu, under the influence of alcohol, laughed mischievously. Ajio finally could not stand him anymore, and pushed him to the maid beside him, saying, "The Prince of Qi is drunk. Help him in to rest." Yes, those maids also blushed, looking as if they wanted to laugh but did not dare to. They supported Song Qingshu and walked into the bridal chamber. Ajio remained outside, stroking his burning cheeks and secretly spitting, saying, "Tomorrow, after you sober up, I will settle the score with you." After the maids escorted Song Qingshu into the bridal chamber, they tactfully left. When they left, they even considerately closed the door. Gazing at the bride, sitting upright on the bed with a red veil on her head, Song Qingshu staggered over. Shakily, he untied the red veil. Gazing at the blushing young girl, he smiled and said, "Little sister Yin, shouldn't we drink a cup of wine from our wedding?" Yalu Yin timidly raised her head and glanced at him. Seeing his staggering appearance, she hastily stood up and supported him, saying, "Brother Song, why are you so drunk? Quickly sit down. It's not the wine that intoxicates you, but the wine that intoxicates you." Song Qingshu pulled her into his embrace, feeling the young girl's tall and slender figure. "Today is our wedding day. I am happy. I'll go get you some water." In the past dozen years, Yalu Yin had never been hugged like this by a man. Smelling the masculine scent of alcohol on his body, she could not help but tremble. Chapter 16:12. Seeing the wine jug fly over, Yalu Yan's eyes widened. She had never seen such exquisite and magical martial arts before. No wonder she had been secretly asking for information about her fiancé. Other than the Golden Snake King and the Chi King, everyone secretly called him the Banished Immortal. Thinking about how he could summon thunder and lightning, and how he could climb up to the heavens to pray for rain, the young girl's worship of him had reached its peak. Now that she saw this scene, she was both shocked and proud. She thought that her husband really was the most powerful man in the world. The women of the grasslands worshipped the strong, and Yalu Yin was no exception. At this time, Song Qingshu had already poured the wine and handed one cup to her. "Come, let's drink cross-cup wine." Yalu Yin looked hesitant. "Brother Song, you have already drunk so much. If you drink more, Sister Yin knows how to care for me," Song Qingshu said jokingly. "Don't worry. This little wine is no problem. Even if you really get drunk, you can't save on the cross-cup wine." "Yes," Yalu Yin blushed. Before today, the two of them could be said to be strangers, and they had not exchanged more than 10 words. She did not expect that this man would become her husband. After this small interlude, the two of them became much more familiar with each other. In fact, this was also on Song Qingshu's purpose. As a man, he naturally did not mind having a relationship with a beautiful young girl, but she was a woman, and a young one at that. Her heart was probably filled with fear and anxiety for the future. The two of them crossed hands, and their bodies were closer than they had ever been. After drinking the cross-cup wine, Song Qingshu sniffed and said with a smile, "Sister Yin-er's body smells so good, unlike me who stinks of alcohol. This is the powder that Sister Ajio chose for me," Yalu Yin said with a red face. "Brother Song, you don't stink." Looking at her timid appearance, Song Qingshu laughed out loud. "You don't have to worry about anything. I can't stand the smell of alcohol on me anymore. How about this? I'll go take a bath first, then I'll come back to find you." "Don't," Yalu Yin grabbed him by the lapel. Her face looked especially beautiful under the light of the phoenix coronet. "Don't go." She hesitated for a moment, then added, "We people on the prairie all love to drink. For us, the smell of alcohol is not only not bad, but it also represents manliness. I like the smell of Big Brother Song right now." Although Song Qingshu had used his junqi to dissolve most of the alcohol, he had drunk too much tonight and was now a little tipsy. The girl's soft and tender words were more potent than the strongest aphrodisiac in the world, causing his body to heat up instantly. "Since that's the case, then I won't leave." Song Qingshu sat on the edge of the bed and looked at his new wife. In terms of appearance, she was not the best among the women he knew, but her greatest advantage was her slender and tall figure, as well as the heroic spirit that was mixed with a sense of childishness between her brows. He suddenly thought of something and couldn't help but ask, "Sister Yin, how old are you this year?" Yalu Yan's face blushed slightly, as if embarrassed to say it out loud. After hesitating for a moment, she moved closer to his ear and whispered a number. When Song Qingshu heard this, his heart skipped a beat. "So young? I couldn't tell at all. I'm not young. Many of the sisters in my tribe who grew up with me have already married and given birth to many children," Yalu Yan explained a little nervously. "I was just a little taller than them when I was young. Big Brother Song, you won't dislike me, right?" I heard that you Han people like petite and exquisite women. I can't wait to be happy. Why would I dislike you? Song Qingshu laughed involuntarily. Using the excuse of being drunk, he said, in my previous life, Zhang Zilin was the object of countless men's fantasies. I didn't expect to have such good luck. In this world, I can actually get a pure and young version of Zhang Zilin. Yilu Yin was confused. Big brother Song, who is Zhang Zilin? Miss World from my hometown. A woman who is as tall and has peerlessly long legs like you. Song Qingshu laughed and pulled her into his arms. He moved closer to her ear and kissed her. Tonight, don't mention other people. Yilu Yin was originally curious about what Miss World was, but being held in his arms and enveloped in the man's masculine aura, her body had long since softened. How could she have the mood to think about other things? Although she grew up on the grasslands and was usually quite courageous, in the arms of this man whose name shook the world, her usual boldness disappeared without a trace. She became even more ladylike than a lady, especially when he began to take off her clothes. Her heart trembled violently, and she was even more bashful than those young ladies of noble families. The red wedding dress slowly slid down, accentuating the whiteness and tenderness of her skin. Song Qingshu swallowed, looking at the slender, well-proportioned, and somewhat tender body in front of him. He could not take his eyes off her. Whether it was towards Zheng Ro or Yilu Yin, Song Qingshu knew very well that there was no unforgettable love between them, especially Yilu Yin. He had only met her a few times and was not even close to her as he was with Zheng Ro. However, this did not prevent him from admiring her beauty. He was a man. Although love was limited, a man's nature made him have unlimited possessiveness. Looking at the tall, slender, and long legs in front of him, Song Qingshu did not have the mood to think about anything else. He just wanted to enjoy and dote on this new little wife of his and slowly spend this wedding night with her. The bright wedding dress was scattered on the ground, and the curtain on the bed was slowly lowered. The wooden bed could only be seen trembling, and from time to time, the tender moans of the bride could be heard from inside. Only the burning red candle silently witnessed all of this. The next day, Song Qingshu walked out of the bridal chamber feeling refreshed. Before he left, he specifically ordered the maids not to disturb Yilu Yin and let her have a good rest. Then, he went directly to Yilu Chukai and Yilu Qi's residence. Because Yilu Chukai was old and drank a lot yesterday, he woke up a little late, so Yilu Qi received him first. Qingshu, you're up so early? Did you sleep well last night? As soon as he finished speaking, Yilu Qi wanted to slap himself. If it was any other day, it would be fine, but last night was the wedding night of the other party and his sister. What kind of brother would ask this? Song Qingshu paused and answered subconsciously, I slept very well. Your sister is very good, and she is very good at serving people. Not only was she not good, she made him very satisfied. That tall and slender body was really a man's gift in bed, and it was a perfect example of what it meant to have fun with legs. Yilu Yin was, after all, a young girl, and her tender body could not bear it. Song Qingshu was also worried that he would hurt her, so he did not force it. However, her amazingly long legs were enough for him to spend the rest of the night delightfully. Of course, this was not something he could discuss with Yilu Qi. Chapter 16:13. There is indeed something. Song Qingshu sat down and picked up his teacup, but did not continue to speak. Instead, he asked if they were used to living in the Golden Snake Camp. Yilu Qi knew that he was probably waiting for his father to arrive before telling him, so he didn't think much of it. The two of them chatted idly like this. Not long after, Yilu Chukai finally finished washing up and came out. Song Qingshu hurriedly got up and saluted. Qingshu greets father-in-law. At the same time, he felt a little strange. Thinking about it carefully, he seemed to have a lot of convenient fathers-in-law now. It was really a headache. Fortunately, Song Yuan Xiao did not come. Otherwise, with his rigid temper, he would probably scold him for this matter. Qingshu is too polite. Why are you here so early? Did you rest well last night? When Yelu Chukai said this, Yelu Chi, who was next to him, suddenly had a strange expression. I rested very well. Thank you, father-in-law, for your concern. Song Qing-shu replied insincerely. He naturally could not tell the other party that he did not rest at all last night, but his daughter was tormented for the whole night. Where is Yin? Why is she not with you? Yelu Chukai looked around and did not see his daughter. Song Qing-shu explained, Yin is still sleeping. This child is still so sleepy. She is already a wife. How can she be like before? It is really improper. Yelu Chukai blew his beard and stared. He did not really want to blame his daughter, but he was worried that his daughter's sleepiness would make her husband unhappy, and it would easily make the 9th princess unhappy. Song Qing-shu hurriedly said, she was too tired yesterday. She wanted to come with us, but I saw that she could not open her eyes, and it was difficult to get out of bed, so I let her rest. Too tired? Why is she tired? Yelu Chukai suddenly reacted. The other party also mentioned that she could not get out of bed. As someone who had been through it, how could he not understand what was going on? At the same time, he was secretly shocked that his daughter's physical fitness had always been good, but she could not get out of bed because of him. As a father, he was both distressed and gratified. He was distressed that his daughter was injured, but gratified that she had such a husband. His daughter should be happy for the rest of her life. But these words could not be said to Song Qing-shu. Could they praise him for his ability? Feeling extremely conflicted, Yelu Chutsai's old face instantly became awkward. Yelu Chi, who was at the side, saw that the situation was not right and hurriedly helped his father out of the predicament. Father, Qing-shu came over this time to say that he has something to discuss with us. Yelu Chukai hurriedly nodded. I wonder why Qing-shu is here this time. Song Qing-shu then said, you two should have heard about what happened to Liao recently, right? Yelu Chukai and Yelu Chi looked at each other, nodded and said, I have heard a little about it. Yelu Isin really has the ambition of a wolf, but I did not think that he would really have the guts to rebel. Fortunately, he failed in the end, and this can be considered as comforting the souls of his colleagues who died in his hands all these years in heaven. Song Qing-shu smiled and said, now that Yelu Isin's group has been swept clean, the officials of Liao's imperial court have been reshuffled, and there's a lot of power vacuum. Have you two ever thought of going back and making a comeback? Yelu Chukai and Yelu Chi were shocked and simultaneously waved their hands and said, absolutely not. We're now tied together with the interests of the Golden Snake Battalion. Why would we have other thoughts? Yelu Chukai was secretly shocked. No wonder the 9th princess was so anxious to facilitate the marriage between Yin and him last night. So it was because she was afraid that we would return to Liao. Yelu Chi obviously also thought of this, and looked worriedly at his father, thinking in his heart, the other party has come with ill intentions. If we show the slightest thought of returning to the country, I'm afraid. But he quickly rejected this idea. After all, according to their past interactions, the other party was not such a cruel and merciless person, not to mention that he had married Yenner. The two of them were already a family. There was even less to worry about. Noticing their expressions, Song Qing-shu smiled and said, you two don't have to worry. We are all a family now. Why would we deliberately test you? Yelu Chukai laughed, but it was obvious that he had relaxed. Song Qing-shu continued, but now that there is a power vacuum in the imperial court of Liao, it is an excellent opportunity, so I want to ask brother-in-law to go back and seize this opportunity. You should be able to go up a level than before. Yelu Chi and his father looked at each other, then smiled bitterly and said, Qing-shu, don't joke. We publicly betrayed the imperial court, although it proved that it was Yelu Isin's evil plan with his majesty's character. How could he admit his mistake? If we go back, not only will we not be able to show our strength, it is more likely that we will be arrested and executed by his majesty. Yelu Chukai also nodded slightly. He had been in the imperial court for many years and understood Yelu Hongji's character very well, very much agreeing with his son's judgment. You're worrying too much, Song Qing-shu said with a smile. I'm not here to send you to your deaths. Of course, I'm prepared. As he spoke, he took out a bright yellow scroll and handed it to them. Why don't you take a look? Both of them were once high officials of the imperial court. How could they not recognize that this was an imperial edict? But they were curious which country's imperial edict this was. Or was it an imperial edict issued by Song Qingshu himself? If that was the case, he was too daring. The most important thing in this world was status. If he publicly proclaimed himself emperor, wouldn't he immediately become the target of public criticism? Confused, they took the imperial edict and opened it to take a look. Their expressions immediately became very interesting, their mouths wide open in shock. This is the appointment edict for brother-in-law. Song Qingshu leisurely sipped tea, reinstate his position in the imperial palace, and at the same time control the troops in the capital. Is this real or fake? Yeluqi felt like he was in a dream, his face full of disbelief as he asked. Of course it is real. How long have you left Liao? Don't tell me you can't even recognize the emperor's imperial jade seal. Song Qingshu said amusedly. Yeluqi picked up the edict and carefully examined it. He couldn't help but nod blankly. This is indeed the emperor's imperial jade seal. This edict also came from the inner palace. The dragon pattern on it can't be fake, but everything was clearly real. But why was the content so fake? With their understanding of Yelu Hongji, why would he give this kind of self-defeating edict? You don't need to think too much. This edict is real. I got it for Brother Yelu. Song Qingshu put down the teacup and explained. You did it. The two were shocked to the point of numbness. Otherwise, do you think Yelu Hongji would give such an edict? Song Qingshu unhappily rolled his eyes at the two. Some things I can't say too clearly. I can only tell you that my power is greater than you can imagine. A mere appointment edict from Liao is nothing. Chapter 16:14. Father-in-law, you can understand it that way. Song Qingshu smiled slightly. He thought that the people of this world didn't have enough imagination. Right now, he could not only influence Liao's decisions to a certain extent, but all of Liao was under his control. Of course, he couldn't tell them such a confidential matter right now. Since they had their own understanding, then it was good to let them continue to misunderstand. Song Qingshu continued. So next, I want to ask Brother Yelu to return to Liao and take control of Liao's military power. In the future, I may need Brother Yelu's help. After Yelu Yisin's fall, while the Emperor and Empress were on the same side, Xiao Pity's family was already the most powerful in the court. Even with Su Quan's relationship, he couldn't completely trust him. Otherwise, another Yelu Yisin would be cultivated. So in the end, after he discussed with Zhao Min and Su Quan, they decided to transfer Yeluqi back to Liao to keep Xiao Pity in check. Whether it was age, experience, or intelligence, Yeluqi was inferior to Xiao Pity. At that time, Yeluqi would have to draw closer to the Emperor and Empress in order to gain a foothold. In this way, the political situation in Liao would truly stabilize. Yeluqi suddenly couldn't help but ask, then when the time comes, who will I listen to? All the palaces have been deployed. This official position has always been held by the Emperor's confidants. Naturally, you will listen to the Emperor. Song Qingshu smiled faintly. Yeluqi looked at him thoughtfully. What if the Emperor orders me to do something that is not beneficial to the Golden Snake Camp? Don't worry, the Emperor will not give such an order. Song Qingshu smiled mysteriously. Yeluqi and his son were shocked. They looked at each other, shocked at the huge amount of information behind these words. But no matter how they guessed, they would never have guessed that the current emperor was one of Song Qingshu's people. After all, I'm still young. I'm afraid it'll be difficult for me to deal with those old foxes in the court alone. Why don't you let my father go with you? Yeluqi continued. Before Song Qingshu could answer, Yeluqi shook his head and said, "It is because you are young that the emperor dares to use you again. It is because you lack experience and qualifications that you can only rely on him. If I go back, the emperor will be afraid, and we, father and son, will be in danger. Moreover, I am now dealing with the government affairs of the Golden Snake Camp. There's still a lot of things to deal with here, and I can't leave." Yeluqi looked at his son with deep meaning. There were some things that he couldn't say clearly. Chi was still too inexperienced and couldn't see the intricacies behind it. If he could go back now, Song Qing-shu wouldn't have just taken out one appointment letter, but two. Now that the relationship between us is not completely stable, how can Song Qing-shu be at ease to let us leave together? What's more, how could there be no checks and balances when you were given such a powerful position? Yin alone isn't enough. Obviously, he needs me and her to stay here as hostages, so that he can control you. Yalu Chukai had been in and out of politics for so many years, and had long mastered the rules of the game. Therefore, although he saw through everything, he didn't have the slightest disgust, but instead felt a trace of gratification. After all, with Yin Er's marriage to Song Qing-shu, his family had been completely tied to him. The stronger he was, the more brilliant his methods were, the brighter the future of the family would be. If he only had martial arts, but no tactics, then he could only be a general who charged and broke through enemy lines, and it would be difficult for him to be a lord. Then the family would really be in danger. Song Qing-shu looked at Yalu Chukai meaningfully, obviously guessing that Yalu Chukai understood his intention. That's right, we can't do without father-in-law, the prime minister. There are still many things that we need to trouble father-in-law with. It was pleasant to talk to smart people, otherwise, many things could easily hurt feelings. After telling the father and son about the matters of returning to Liao, he chatted for a while more, then got up to leave. When he returned to his room, Yalu Yin was no longer in bed. Song Qing-shu asked the maid and found out that she went to the 9th princess's room after washing up. So he turned around and walked to Ajio's room. When he arrived at Ajio's room, he saw Yalu Yin serving tea to Ajio. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but be speechless. Is this the rhythm of a bride serving tea to the first wife? Ajio also smiled bitterly. I already said that we sisters are very easygoing and don't need to do this, but little sister Yin insisted on serving tea. Yalu Yin looked at Song Qing-shu and couldn't help but think of the scene of him playing with her legs last night. She couldn't help but blush. This is what my father told me to do. Song Qing-shu and Jio looked at each other, understanding that this was the gesture that Yalu Chukai wanted his daughter to make. On one hand, it was to show that she had no intention of competing with Ajio, and, on the other hand, it was equivalent to a pledge of allegiance to Ajio. After drinking this cup of tea, the two sides could be considered to be on the same side. Since it's father-in-law's good intentions, then Ajio don't refuse. Song Qing-shu knew that if Ajio didn't drink it, it would easily arouse the Yalu family's suspicions. Ajio clearly thought the same as him. He took the tea and took a sip. Thank you, little sister Yin Only then did Song Qing-shu walk over and embrace the two women in his arms, one in each hand. Okay, from now on, we are a family. Our family doesn't have any rules, so Yin you don't have to be so nervous. Yes, big sister Ajio has always been very good to me, Yalu Yin said with a red face. Ajio pushed him away in annoyance. It's not good for people to see this in broad daylight. So what if they see it? We are husband and wife, and no one can stop us. Song Qing-shu said proudly. Yalu Yin blinked her eyes and felt that her husband was a little unusual, but the girls on the grassland liked this kind of man who bravely expressed his love. Ajio was deeply influenced by Confucian education. Although they had been together for so long, he still couldn't stand his boldness. He blushed and spat. Nonsense again. Stop it. The Southern Song's envoy is here. Southern Song's envoy? Song Qing-shu frowned. He didn't need to ask to know why the Southern Song's envoy came. It was nothing more than to urge the Golden Snake Camp to send troops to attack the Jin Kingdom with the Southern Song dynasty. The most difficult thing was that the two sides were now allies, and they had promised to send troops together, so it was difficult to refuse. In fact, the Southern Song dynasty has already sent several waves of envoys, and I have used various methods to send them away. This time, another envoy came. Obviously, the Southern Song dynasty is a little impatient. Ajio also looked like he had a headache. Oh, by the way, this envoy heard that you are back and insisted on seeing you, saying that he is your acquaintance. My acquaintance? Song Qing-shu was stunned and curious about who it was. Then tell him to come to the study. I'll go there right away. Yalu Yin hesitated and said, then I'll go back first. Hearing her timid words, Song Qing-shu couldn't help laughing and grabbed her hand. You are my woman now. What is there to avoid? Let's go together. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.